Ladies and gentlemen, we've made it to the last episode of Murder Church. Well, the last episode of Season 6 of Murder Church. Charlie Adelson, put it to bed right now. Get ready to go into closing arguments. Let's start this thing.
Let's rock.
We've made it, boom, to the final episode of Charlie Adelson. Actually, a little bit earlier than normal. I'm usually more like 9:30. We in here early. As everybody else is still asleep also. Tina came through here. I need to set up the chat so I can't get it going. We're going to get right in here. We've got 3.5 hours just of closing arguments and then just a little bit of the verdict and sentencing. And we'll be here for just a little bit. We're going to be here for just a little bit is what we're going to do here. And see if this works. Leah coming through. Tina in the house. Gamby's in the house. Welcome in this morning. Like I said, yeah, it looks like a lot of beautiful people are sleeping in this morning. I don't blame them. On Halloween weekend, we had a good one on Friday night. I know that. Without further ado, I'm jumping right in here. We got a wheel that I'm going to roll this morning as well. Hopefully some fine folks roll through here, and we'll see how that goes. But without further ado, closing arguments from the state right now. And I think this is all closing. I don't think if it's just her doing closing for 3.5 hours, this might not be the last episode, but I'm pretty sure this should be the last episode. So.
Selection, we talked about the burden of proof and how
Morning, Amanda.
it's my burden to prove this case to you beyond a reasonable doubt through evidence. And generally speaking, the defense's job is to poke holes in the evidence and argue that it falls short of meeting that high burden. And we also learned at jury selection that the defense does not have to prove anything. But sometimes if the law enforcement investigation is so thorough and so compelling that there's really no way to poke holes in the evidence, he has to basically admit his own words, his own text messages. That stuff is undeniable, right? And those things prove that he was in cahoots with Catherine McBanois in 2013, through the murder in 2014, and all the way up until her arrest in October of 2016. He knows he can't deny that he paid the killers because of this bizarre practice he had of stapling his money. So sometimes when a defendant can't attack the facts or the law, they instead try to explain it away by saying, you can't trust what you're seeing. It's not what it appears to be. It's actually something else entirely. Often, as in this case, the individual explanation, so when you zoom in on one piece of evidence with its attached explanation, can be like, maybe. But when you zoom out and you add all these things together, this explanation, and this explanation, and this explanation, this coincidence, and this coincidence, and this coincidence, it starts making less and less sense. It starts being less and less reasonable. And when you zoom out from the defense's theory, it's really baby, right? Because to find it reasonable, you have to buy a lot of things that he's selling. The most obvious of which is that
I think I've already figured out the next season also.
Garcia hated him. He and Rivera traveled to Tallahassee twice to kill someone he
seeking justice. Thank you for that share.
hated, in hopes that he would give them money for it on the back end. Please think about that. To hit this defendant with
Morning, Sammy. Morning, Brooklyn.
hurts. These two dudes with no connection at all to Dan Markel, and without two nickels to rub together, rented a car and paid for gas to come to Tallahassee and stay in a hotel twice.
I feel you there, Bassett.
In order to kill someone that this defendant hated. To harm him. And for what?
Morning, Daria. Daria, I know you love the book club. This Tuesday is the final episode of the book that we're on, The Stranger Beside Me. We're going to be hanging out for an hour listening to the final few chapters together. and then we're going to be talking about a new book.
Maybe get money, maybe he just turns him in for murder. Why not just kill and rob him if what you're after is money and there's no hired hit? Why not just kill and rob him if your motive is, we hate him? Then the bad guys don't even have any contact with him, according to his own story. They didn't threaten him, they did not beat him into submission. Instead, they sent his own girlfriend to extort him on their behalf. And without any actual contact from the bad guys, the defendant just opened up his safe and handed over his beloved money that he had saved his entire life since he was a child. Just handed it over. Take it all. And when that amount wasn't sufficient, these stone-cold murdering gangsters let the defendant go on a payment plan to give him the rest of the money. They let Catherine McBanois skim off the top each month. And never, over the next 2 years that he was being extorted monthly, these gangsters, remember that money won't go to the principal. That $3,000 a month. They never show up.
This guy looks like a floating head back here. Like, this black blends in. Like, the pants are kind of throwing it off a little bit, but the black is so dark. Like, there's no, like, light reflecting off of the shadows, and it looks like he's just got a floating head.
To demand the remaining $185,000 that this defendant has agreed to pay them. Then, you also need to find reasonable that over the 2 years of this supposed
Bassett Page with that Sharon X. I really appreciate that, Bassett. Thank you so much.
extortion layaway plan, that the defendant continued to do what? Send these kissy faces and love texts to Catherine McBanois. He's sending these messages to a woman who got him into this mess, and he says he didn't suspect she was involved. What? What do we know about this man? He didn't suspect she was involved. She's taking the money. He's never even heard from the bad guys. He didn't see it that way, that she got him into this mess. They grew closer after she began extorting him for $3,000 a month. Meanwhile, the defendant and Catherine McBanois break up. She continues to maintain her direct and indirect contact with Sigfredo Garcia, the man who's extorting him, the man who murdered his former brother-in-law in cold blood. But he sees her as a friend. The kissy faces and I love yous continue, even after Catherine McBanois got back together with the man who executed Dan Markel, the father of his young nephews, and a guy who's actively extorting him. This defendant continued to reach out to her over and over again to offer her favors and gifts, including a birthday gift for Garcia, and to tell her he loves her and how lucky he is to have her in his life. Lucky? Next, to find a reasonable doubt,
Lucky?
to find it reasonable that the defendant never texted or talked about this first layer of extortion.
Look at this fucking
Why?
guy.
According to him,
Thank you, Sumi. Appreciate that.
So they did. Then you have to believe he never reported or revealed this information to law enforcement out of fear of the gangsters. And finally, you have to believe that this living in fear of death by gang members over 2 years didn't cause a change in his general demeanor that his friends noticed, but later the bank and law enforcement did. He says that's because, well, I became worried that I might be falsely arrested. So I wasn't a hot mess when I was being extorted by gang members and threatened to be killed and my whole family killed. But I became a hot mess when I started to get worried that the cops might be getting closer.
Welcome in.
And I have no real way of knowing.
I've got it sped up, Brad. I've got it at 1.5 speed to get through it here this morning.
If all this stuff sounds ridiculous to you, if it sounds reasonable to you, or if y'all just heard so much stuff.
He's just slamming coffees. I'm ready to do this, Judge. Judge Everett, are we ready to rock and roll? Are they ready? Is the council ready? Is Charlie Adelson ready? Is everyone ready? Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, I just wanted everyone to know. I can't even, talk. I have to really think
If
about
you're totally confused and you can't even remember what the evidence in the case showed.
You guys remember that old, the speed talker? He used to get commercials and shit. He was the guy that would read, or used to be, the guy that would read, the end of the commercials with all the drug bullshit. I think he was the Guinness World Record fastest talker.
But they only need to get one of you confused enough to derail this whole thing, right? So I've got to go through each thing with you. Your verdict has to be unanimous. So I want to go through the testimony, I want to review the evidence, and I want to spend a little bit more time talking about this multitude of explanations the defense has offered in an effort to really turn each piece of evidence on its head. This is Dan Markel. He is the victim in this case. A brilliant lawyer, a funny guy, a son, a colleague, a brother, a mentor, and a friend. But most of all, a father. A dedicated and loving father whose downfall is brought about by the fact that his number one priority was maximizing his access to those two little boys in the wake of a bitter divorce from their mother. And despite the defense's efforts to characterize their client as the real victim here, Dan Markell remains the only victim in this case. The only thing he was guilty of is fighting Markell for those means. And he lost. He didn't lose in court, but he lost. This is what he looked like before this defendant hired a hitman to kill him. And this is what he looked like afterwards. The evidence has shown that on July 18th, 2014...
I was muted there. I don't think I said anything too important.
This brilliant...
Oh yeah, the emojis are going away next week. This is the last episode of Charlie Adelson, presumably. So yeah, the Prison Charlie, Devil Donna, and the puzzle pieces emojis will be going away. So get use of those.
Man was gunned down in broad daylight in the driveway of his own home.
Get some new emojis in there.
His horrific death ultimately set police down two separate paths following the two most promising leads they had. The first was to chase down that Prius that Mr. Geiger saw fleeing the crime scene. And we'll examine those efforts in detail. The second path was to ask, as we would in any murder investigation, who might want to have done this? Who would want Dan Markell dead? And within 1 hour of the shooting, before Professor Markell was even pronounced dead, this path was already pointing to the
There we go. BGOG knows what's up. Puzzle pieces.
His sister revealed to law
Rash is going to convince
that her
us.
family hated Dan Markell and that her brother, Charlie, had joked about hiring a hitman to kill him. And this trash talk, of course, would be meaningless had he not been killed by a hitman. So who did it appear had a motive to want Dan Markell dead? His own family. And what offense had Mr. Markell committed against these people? Refusing to let his children be taken away from him? Objecting to them disparaging him to his kids? The evidence has shown that the Adelson family was all about psychological warfare. And when all else failed, they were willing to go even further to win. I want to examine this motive in more detail and look at exactly how it's attributable to this defendant. Despite the victim's efforts to minimize this loss, it's really clear that the divorce between Wendy and Danny was a particularly nasty one. They fought over everything, all the way from the children down to the bicycle and the tennis racket. In January of 2013, Wendy Adelson filed a motion to allow her to relocate to South Florida with the kids. They were 2 and 3 at that time. As one basis for this request, Wendy cites the wife's parents reside in Coral Springs and the wife's brother resides 20 minutes away. The children are very close to the wife's parents. Wendy Adelson also alleges in this filing that the husband has also created a hostile work environment for the wife at FSU School of Law. Wendy Adelson viewed herself as stuck in Tallahassee, a characterization which she now denies, the one which was used to describe her situation by Jeffrey Lacasse on the witness stand and also in her own pleadings in these divorce filings. In Markell's answer on page 80, he seeks continued equal time sharing in Tallahassee. He seeks sole parental responsibility on issues related to the education, religion, and medical upbringing of the kids. And we go to this May email from Donna Adelson to Wendy. These emails are offered as examples of how invested Donna Adelson was in this litigation and in Wendy's life in general. They reveal that relocation was a huge priority for Donna, and that it was also a high priority for Wendy, Harvey, and the defendant as well. Wendy testified that her mom really wasn't that involved in her divorce proceedings. Again, these emails proved the opposite was true. On May 3rd, 2013, this email references Dan's divorce filing as, quote, his 23-page rant. She then crystallizes the importance of relocation, stating, the most important part of your divorce is relocation, in bold. I sincerely hope that your attorney understands this is your, all caps, non-negotiable. She needs to hear from you how serious you are about this and how it will benefit the children with a close-knit family support system as well as your significantly better paying job. But on June 21st, 2013, Wendy's motion to relocate was denied by the court, with the court finding that the wife has not met her burden of proof that a relocation is in the best interest of the minor children. Like the heroine in her book, Wendy and the boys were officially stuck in this small stop on the way to what we had previously known as civilization. Wendy worked hard to try to convince you that none of this was a very big deal to her, her mother, or her brother. And she said she was expecting to win everything in the divorce. She was expecting Danny to lose everything in the divorce. She was partly right. Danny did end up losing everything, but not in court. She had already lost relocation, and her attorney had to get off the case as a result of whatever Danny was filing in court. And he was poised to really take her through the ringer with this grandma motion, the fraud allegation, and the contempt motion that was all pending. Even if he wasn't going to be successful, folks, it was going to be a very unpleasant ride for Wendy Adelson. But as we have learned, gibbers hadn't beaten the Adelson family yet. On the stand, Wendy Adelson suggested that relocation was not a big issue for her. It was just suggested by a friend. But the other evidence in the case suggests the opposite. Jeffrey Lacasse said she was a complete mess over the litigation, especially the relocation. She wrote a book about a human rights attorney who was stuck in a small town in the Florida Panhandle because of her hapless Canadian professor husband's job at NFSU. And maybe most importantly, Wendy filed this motion for relocation. Her lawyer didn't file it without her knowing. Was the motion doomed from the start? Wendy clearly hoped not. But there were other ways to skin the cat. Here's a June email from Donna to Wendy. In response to the court order denying relocation, Donna emails Wendy, quote,
Lexi the law nerd, thank you for that share.
"It's time for action. It's time to take control of your life and not let Jibbers think he's won anything by having you remain in Tallahassee, 8 hours away from the only family you have. Let's show this F blank 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 what will make him absolutely miserable. And later, the rest of your life, and consequently, Dad's, mine, and yes, even Charlie's, will be affected by how well you can perform/act before July 31st. You can be a good actress when you want to. I've seen you in action. You need to put on the performance of your life. Jibbers hasn't beaten the Adelson family yet." Then on June 25th, this is continued, that same email, we get a plan of action. Take a photo of the boys dressed nicely standing at the front door by the sign of the Tallahassee church. They're Jewish, remember? Then change your Facebook status to this one so everyone will see this. Perhaps a line on the photo with "New beginnings in Tallahassee" might be nice. How happy do you think you will be? Make arrangements to get the boys caught up with a private tutor at the teenage Catholic church, who will come to your house to teach the young men about Jesus. If you don't have time to arrange this, I'll be happy to do it for you. Let Jibbers know that your children will be baptized in the Catholic Church, and you'll certainly invite him to the event. I've already checked this out, and the baptism can be arranged within 2 weeks. We can send out e-bites to Jibbers, his parents, sister, and anyone else you want to invite. 4, I'm looking into summer camp programs for the boys. We will pay for it, even if the boys end up only going for the few days that they're in Tallahassee with you. 5, register them for toddler classes at the church. I've looked into this too.
And we do have a wheel ready to rock from the beautiful people here in the Buzz Nation. So I'm going to go ahead and get that rocking and rolling, and we will probably spin that after Georgia gets completed. But we do have a new wheel already rocking and rolling with 4 names on the new wheel. So just to let you guys know, I'll be keeping an eye out for anybody that maybe would like to get on the new wheel with any kind of donation. But yeah, I'll go ahead and start working on the other one, and we'll give something away this morning.
We can show Jibbers that they are enrolled for the fall semester.
Thanks, start November out.
And you cannot tell anyone this is an act. Take control from him. Get to him psychologically. He's going to want you to stop this. You have one final opportunity to make him angry. We want him ticked off so he realizes that he could lose control over his kids. We plan to make a financial offer to him to allow this relocation. You need to work this plan, and we'll help you through it so that it may affect how much we offer him. Maybe he's willing to let you relocate if he knew his children could attend this private Hebrew academy. Or perhaps he'd like them to invite him to a Christmas party at their other Sunday school. Let's get this going now. I know you would never want to think that you didn't do absolutely everything you could to come down to your family. Dad and I have changed our lives this year to support you and assist you and the boys in every possible way. Charlie has accepted the loss of the office business income for us to do this because he loves you and wants only the best possible future for you. It's time for you to show us that you can put on the performance of your life for the next few weeks. And then, on June 27th, she follows up with another email along the same lines, criticizing the judge and Wendy's attorney and adding, obviously the court isn't out to help you. It's clear since Judge Hobbs' last ruling that she could care less about anything you have to say on your behalf. You need to help yourself. You know, Wendy, most of the wars that have been fought for the last couple of thousand years have been fought over religion. These emails are such telling glimpses into the family dynamics behind this murder. This email is just an example of how relentless Donna Adelson was. And it's clear from these emails that she's conferring with the defendant on these plans that she's proposing. Charlie brought up a good point when he said that Americans were dropped behind enemy lines during World War II wearing Nazi uniforms to get what they wanted. They had a job to get done, and they did what they needed to accomplish it. You have a job to get done in a very short time frame to accomplish it. If you dressed the kids up in Hitler youth uniforms and brought them down here, I could care less if it was an act of defiance that would show Jibbers that he's not in control. Why not stand up to this fucker? Why not fight? That's all this is, Wendy, an act of defiance that will put a scare into this jackass. It will infuriate him. You need to see the big picture. You need to look into the future of what a life without your only family nearby teaching in Tallahassee, with Danny always in the picture, will give you. It's not a pretty picture. Not everything one has to do in life is comfortable or easy. The extremism that Jibbers is already teaching the boys is nothing more than brainwashing. Religion is brainwashing. Control of the masses.
Thank you. Hope you had a good Halloween, Shelley.
I don't think you realize the type of offer we're considering. We're planning on you, Charlie, Dad, and I going as high as equal parts in a $1 million offer of $333,000 from each of us. We're a team. We can't do this without your help. You've already lost relocation according to the legal system. Well, it is about winning and losing. We're trying to get a win. You deserve it. You deserve so much more than a life without family teaching in Tallahassee. Even though the divorce was final on July 31st, 2013, the anger and bitterness associated with this split was still festering. Litigation continued and even increased as both parties filed motions over the next several months alleging that the other was violating the marital settlement agreement, and both parties seeking to have the other side held in contempt of court. In October of 2013, Wendy filed a motion to enforce the marital settlement agreement and have Dan held in contempt. Dan was hearing, and the defendant was hearing about all of this as it went on from his mother, as indicated in the emails and in the text messages shown here as well. Here she's telling him how terrible things are for Wendy and how it's negatively affecting his dad's health. And later that month, when Wendy was about to make the second dumbest mistake of her life after marrying Dan Markell by buying a house in Tallahassee, Charlie says Wendy probably hasn't mentioned it to him because it's stupid. And then, after he gets Wendy to pull the plug on the house, he's praised as the miracle worker that solved this problem. This text was sent on Halloween of 2013, the very day that Catherine McDowell testified. This defendant broached the subject to her of, hey, do you know anybody that could rough somebody up? The defendant was hearing about Wendy's situation regularly from Donna. Here we see Donna telling the defendant how angry at Wendy's attorney and stressed out Wendy is. It was on February 15th of 2014. And here's another text from Donna Adelson to Charlie Adelson 4 days later, discussing the details of Danny's actions and expressing how much she hates him. Here on March 4th, 2014, we have Donna planning in private with
that was crazy to hear.
While she's at the race in Gainesville.
What a maniac.
She asks him to delete this message after he reads it. Although he's not with Harvey, and Harvey nor his birthday are mentioned in this text message. All that's mentioned in this text message is, I'm going to pull over at a rest stop and talk to you in private. This is the grandma motion. On March 26, 2014, less than 4 months prior to this murder, the defendant files his grandma motion, the counter motion for enforcement of the marital settlement agreement on parenting issues, and motion for contempt and sanctions. Again, alleging that Wendy is not facilitating communication between he and the kids, and getting after Donna personally. In this filing, Dan Markell alleges that on 3 separate occasions in November of 2013, the children informed him of their maternal grandmother, Donna Adelson, disparaging him. The boys indicate that, quote, Grandma says you're stupid. She says you are trying to take her sunshines away from her. And, quote, Grandma says she hates you.
Sunshines.
Dan Markell requested for, quote, enjoin the former wife from allowing the maternal grandmother to have unsupervised time with the children, and to impose appropriate limitations to safeguard the children from being subjected to disparaging comments about their father. Contrary to what Wendy Adelson told us, we learned this issue was taken seriously by both sides, and that Dan Markell was particularly hot at the time of his death because of some recent issues that were going on. So to the extent that there was any banana bread peace offering made, it apparently fell short of diffusing the issues within this family. This situation was a pressure cooker, and it was about to blow. As we learned, this grandma motion was never decided by the court because Dan Markell was murdered before it could be heard. Whether or not that is a coincidence in timing is up to you all to decide. Wendy told you that she and Dan were getting along pretty well at the time, the weeks leading up to his murder. But this assertion does not fit with the rest of the evidence in this case. In fact, her own court filings are completely contrary to that assertion. In addition, her boyfriend at the time, Jeffrey Lacasse, told you all that she took all of this very seriously, that she became upset every time there was a filing, and that her behavior became increasingly emotional and erratic as the time flowed closer and closer up to what ultimately was the murder day. According to Lacasse, she was especially concerned about the relocation issue. And Stephen Webster, he was Professor Markell's attorney, testified, told us that Markell was irate at the time of his death over 2 issues. The first being Wendy enrolling one of the kids in a school without consulting him, and the second one being him overhearing Donna Adelson refer to him as stupid on a recent Skype visit that he had with the boys. So this was far from the peaceful situation that Wendy was trying to sell you. Why was she trying to sell you that? Was she trying to protect her brother? She even told law enforcement at her interview on the day of the murder that she wanted everyone held accountable for this to the fullest extent of the law, unless it was her family. The defense seems to be telling you the litigation between Danny and Wendy was not a very big deal, because minimizing the litigation minimizes the motive for the Adelson family to want Dan Markell dead. They even called Wendy's attorney to tell you that relocation was a lost cause. But what she actually said was, yes, I lose most of these motions, but in this case I actually thought there was a chance because of some of the surrounding circumstances. Then I thought maybe they called her to say the divorce was routine, but what she actually said was this case was odd. That was her word, mainly because Dan Markell came after her personally, forcing her to withdraw from the case, which had never happened before. So what her testimony proved was that this was not a routine run-of-the-mill divorce proceeding. It was one of her more difficult cases. And she didn't even have Donna in her ear like the defendant did. So the motive was clearly there. The question then becomes, was the defendant successful in distancing himself from that motive in your eyes as jurors? He says that the litigation had no impact on his life. The emails suggest otherwise. He's included on these texts. He's all over the wiretap, meddling in Wendy's life with Donna. Could the defendant have cared enough about his sister's marital problems to commit murder? Maybe, maybe not. But if he didn't, his mom certainly cared enough with both of them. And she was in his ear all the time. In defendant's own words, you can't have a miserable mom. To illustrate this point, I refer you back to the emails and to that phone call that I played that happened before the bump, where Donna and the defendant are discussing this boyfriend of Wendy's at that time, Dave. This call, along with the call about Wendy taking a particular job, which is also on that same exhibit, I think it states 130, was offered as examples to show you how the dynamics work in this family. Wendy appears to be the weak link of the pack. She needs to be protected. She needs to be helped. She needs to be coddled. She needs to be saved by Donna and the defendant. Donna is the overbearing matriarch who nags everyone to death about whatever.
Yes, we are at closing. This is the last episode of this season.
It is. That's currently on, I call it the wheel. The wheel is turning all the time, right? And Wendy getting away from Dan Markell and moving to South Florida was number one on the wheel. It was the top priority in 2013 and in 2014. And this defendant fancied himself the savior of this family. Equal parts black sheep and mama's boy, he would often try to help Wendy at Donna's bidding. When a problem was perceived regarding Wendy's love life, aka this breaking up with Dave situation, shouldn't break up with Dave, Dave's a good guy, Donna enlists the defendant to go in and fix it, to solve the problem. When Wendy didn't know what was best for her regarding a job opportunity, Donna sent the defendant to fix it. And the evidence has shown that Dan Markell was a major problem for Wendy, and that meant he was a major problem for Donna, who in turn made Dan Markell a major problem for this defendant. Enter Catherine Magbanua, who had connections to a criminal element, and she presented an opportunity to the defendant to do what he does and solve this problem. On Halloween 2013, the defendant began the process of soliciting Catherine Magbanua to commit murder. Magbanua solicited Garcia. Garcia brought in Rivera. So if the seed of this conspiracy was planted in the spring of 2013, when Donna was looking into converting the kids to Christianity or making this $1 million offer to Dan Markell, it took root that summer when the relocation was denied and the defendant began, quote, looking into all options to solve the problem of Danny Markell, including hiring a hitman. And the conspiracy grew further still when Dan Markell filed that motion to preclude Donna from having unsupervised contact with the grandkids, the grandma motion. And as Wendy Adelson relayed to Jeffrey LaPaz just 5 days before the murder, she was never going to be able to move to South Florida unless something happened to Danny. This conspiracy spread when the defendant met someone who could actually get this thing done. Someone who was in a position of trust in his life, a person who had connections to the kind of people who, for a price, were willing to point a gun at a complete stranger and pull the trigger. And guess what wasn't a problem once Dan Markell was dead? Relocation. Within a couple days, Wendy and the kids moved to South Florida. She changed the names of Professor Markell's children from Markell to Adelson. And just like that, their father was erased. No more squabbles over kosher diets or visitation schedules. No more death matches over marital assets. No more small town pit stop on the way to nowhere, Tallahassee. No more Dan Markell. And this case may have gone unsolved if not for a few things. Number one was Mr. Geiger. Does anyone other than James Geiger watch out for their neighbors anymore? He heard a loud noise and looked into it because something wasn't right. His observation and description of that Prius was critical to this investigation. It was really the only clue that police had from the crime scene, other than the fact that this appeared to be a targeted hit.
Thank you so much for that right there. That's a year. Forrest Nelson, subscribe, hit the like, share, and comment. Do all the things. Thanks, Steve and the mods, for all you do. Forrest, thank you for all you do, sir. I mean, you've been an amazing Buzz Nation member and just friend in the chat. You've been amazing. I see you come through all my videos. You come through Wrestle Plunge, and you're awesome, man. I really appreciate that kind of energy. Is crazy. Just positivity. But yeah, 12 months right here in the nation. Unbelievable, Forrest. Thank you, sir. Thank you, seriously. From the bottom of my heart. Melissa, welcome in.
How would law enforcement even start to find a single light-colored Prius? This investigation may have gone nowhere if not for the tireless efforts of law enforcement to pull through all those records you've seen in evidence or heard referenced in this case, including the tower dump, phone records, SunPass records, iFiles, surveillance videos, and so much more looking for needles and haystacks. And they found a few. One is Garcia's phone number, which was in that tower dump from Premier Jim. And when cross-referenced with all the call detail records of all the Adelson family members, there was a single hit. A call from Garcia to Harvey Adelson on July 1st, 2014. An ill-fated attempt to confront who he thought was his baby mama's new boyfriend, but who turned out to be the father of his baby mama's new boyfriend. And then tracking Garcia's cell phone to match, time-wise, a particular sun pass that went through toll plazas at the same time as the phone. That sun pass was identified as being affixed to a particular rental case, which led to this rental contract bearing the phone numbers of both Luis Rivera and Suprema Garcia. Although you're not being asked to decide the guilt of anyone on the screen other than this defendant, it's necessary for you to understand the roles that each played in order to understand how it is that Charlie Adelson fits into this conspiracy. Whatever your thoughts about whether or how much these unindicted players are involved, today's not their trial, and you're not going to be asked to decide anything other than
not yet anyway.
What is alleged is that the defendant solicited Catherine Magbanua to commit the murder. He conspired with Catherine Magbanua to commit the murder with her, and that the murder was accomplished with the defendant guilty as a principal because he hired and paid for this heinous work to be done. All right, let's see what happens when we follow the Prius. So following the Prius, as we talked about, leads to the rental contract bearing the name of Luis Rivera and the phone numbers of both he and Garcia. Those two led to Catherine Magbanua. Catherine Magbanua led to this defendant. And I want to walk through exactly how we get from this light-colored Prius fleeing the scene to the defendant. Start with Luis Rivera. The defense may seek to discredit his testimony because he's a bad dude. His status as a felon and a gang member are definitely things you should consider when you're weighing his testimony in this case. But please consider that his resume as a bad guy was precisely why he was selected to do this gruesome job. Rivera's gang status made him a more attractive candidate to do this murder with Garcia. In a hot tub in March of 2014, the defendant mentions his connection to a Cuban criminal element. Jeffrey Lacasse reported this within a couple days of the murder when he couldn't have known the ethnicity of the killer. The evidence has shown that the
nice, Amanda. Hopefully we got some other new people to roll through too. Yeah, next week, should be next week. If I have everything, if I have all my ducks in a row, I believe this right here today is going to be the end. We're going to get through both closing bits of this, and then we'll go into the verdict and sentencing, and that should be it. So next week should start a brand new trial, and I haven't said what it's going to be just yet, but I did go ahead and choose it because I want to do it, quite frankly. I've wanted to do it since season 2, but we haven't, so we're going to be doing it this time. Something always comes up, or I want to try to, take advantage of a trial that's happening in real time, whether it be Karen Reed with Phil Spector, or whether it be even this one with his mom going on trial. This next one is going to be a female murderer. That's the only hint I'm giving.
And the criminal element was, of course, Garcia and Rivera. And we know that at the time the defendant made that statement in the hot tub, the plan to kill Dan Markel was already well in the works. That statement was made just 3 months before the killer's first trip to Tallahassee in June of 2014. The statement reveals that the defendant wasn't scared of Catherine Magbanua and her associates. To the contrary, he was boastful. He was bragging about it. He was a big man who was going to solve his little sister's problem, make his mom proud, and get away with it because he was thinking of everything. And he later would say and call JJ that nothing was done improper, and suggest that no evidence could be available to tie the killers to him or his family. And he was confident enough of this to brag about it in that hot tub setting, which he thought could never come back to him. He was untouchable. Because if push ever really came to shove, who are you going to believe? An oral surgeon or a gang member? He's banking on that. In regards to Rivera's plea deal, the actual only condition of his plea deal is to tell the truth. And what did he tell us? Catherine Magbanua hired Garcia, and Garcia hired him to do a murder. Why? To help the lady who he understood to be the dentist's sister to get her kids. Aside from fitting with the other evidence in the case, there were a few things that independently corroborated Rivera's testimony. One is that accidental discharge that he told us took place in the rented Prius. This was a fact we didn't know before and were able to confirm upon reinspection of the vehicle. He also told us about the location and timing of the money drop on the morning after the murder at his and Jessica's residence, which was able to be confirmed or corroborated initially by phone records and now also by Catherine Magbanua's testimony. And of course, the phone records confirm Rivera did come to Tallahassee, not just on the July trip, which we knew about, but also on that first June scouting trip or attempted murder trip. The communication records tell us a few other things too. That's the June trip. July, June. This slide shows all the calls between our parties on the night before the shooters made that June trip to Tallahassee. You can see a 25-minute call from Catherine Magbanua to the defendant at 9:17 p.m. on June 2nd, 2014. This call was placed while Catherine McDaniel was consistent with traveling on her way back from Comfort Rental Car, where the first rental car was rented, to her residence. As soon as the defendant hangs up with Katie, he calls his parents' landline and has a 25-minute conversation. On the stand, the defendant was asked about the use of landlines and whether he believed them to be more secure. He testified that on the call he was being asked about at that time that he was talking about switching over to a landline because he was in a place that had bad reception. If there's bad reception in South Florida at a dental office, what about all the other mentions of using a landline that we hear on the wire? Surely he wasn't in a place with bad reception for all these calls. And why call the parents on the landline? Surely they have reception in their South Beach high-rise. In the 2 years of phone records that were examined in this case, the defendant talks to his parents on the landline 28 times, or 0.07% of the times that he talks to them. So mostly on the cell phone by a large majority. 3 of these 28 times were on the days that the cars were rented to do these trips to Tallahassee. Whether or not that is a coincidence is entirely up to you. After the killers returned from Tallahassee on that first trip, we have a couple text messages of interest. On June 8th, 2014, the defendant indicates he's still working on Dad's birthday present, and Donna indicates, I know you'll come through. Then on July 6th, we've got Wendy Adelson with a location at or near her parents' place when she texts Dan Markell and confirms he's going to be in town for his own murder. This slide depicts the night before the second trip. We know Catherine Nagbanowa and the defendant are together that evening at her place. He departs between 12:42 and 1 a.m. And then so after the defendant departs Catherine Nagbanowa's residence, we've got Catherine Nagbanowa calling Sigfredo Garcia. So within minutes of...
I love watching the guesses in chat.
Garcia, she talks to Garcia 7 more times into the wee hours of that night, the last one being at 9:56 a.m. And then at 9 a.m. the next morning, Garcia calls the rental car place. Once the Prius is rented, the second trip begins. The Prius is rented at 6:15 p.m. on July 15th, 2014. There are several calls between the parties.
Right, dude. New book this week, new trial this week. It's all lining up, baby. And new show this week. Tuesday, instead of being just a regular Murder Church, Tuesday is now reaction videos as well. Tuesday and Thursday is going to be body cam reaction nights. Sunday mornings will just be Murder Church. And, of course, Feral Friday will stay. So there's a lot of new stuff. A little shaking up here at Publicly Buzzed.
On the day that the Prius is rented. So we just talked about the night before.
Shaking the old 8 ball.
On the day the Prius was rented, we've got these 2 calls, several calls, including these 2 calls from the defendant to his parents' landline. Garcia and Rivera then depart for Tallahassee July 16th, about 2 p.m., and arrive in Tallahassee around 1 a.m. Although this trip was only about 36 hours from the time they left Miami to the time they returned, there were 12 phone events between the defendant and Catherine Nagbanowa during that time, and there were 4 phone events between the defendant and Donna Adelson during that time frame, including late into the night on the night before the murder. On July 17th, Nagbanowa relayed to accusers that this murder had to be done that day because the victim was scheduled to leave town the next day. And we confirmed that Dan Markell was in fact scheduled to leave for New York City the next morning on July 19th. It's hard to imagine how Louis Rivera could have obtained this information, if not in that pattern that we consistently observed in this case. Defendant to Nagbanowa, to Garcia, to Rivera, and back the other way. Certainly you're not really to believe that the killers divined this information from the professor's blog. That's not reasonable. Wendy offered that Danny sometimes put his travel information on Facebook, but you learned from Agent Sanford that there was no information about this particular trip on Danny's Facebook, so they didn't get it from there. This is because, as Rivera and Nagbanowa both told you, this information came in the form of that letter from the defendant through Catherine Nagbanowa. How would these 2 hitmen even know where to go or who to kill if they hadn't given any kind of instruction? Catherine Nagbanowa said she knew the plan was to kill Wendy's ex, but she never knew his full name until after he was killed. She did, however, deliver that envelope that the defendant put in her diaper bag to Sigfredo Garcia. The paper, she knew, contained the instructions for the murder. The defendant advised Catherine Nagbanowa that she should not touch the envelope or open it, as he had taken precaution to ensure that his prints and DNA would not be on it, that it would be untraceable to him, and she should do the same. She was to deliver the envelope to Garcia, and that's what she did. This is corroborated by Rivera, who says Garcia had a paper with him on the first trip, and it contained a picture of Dan Markell and a printed address. The day of the murder, we have communications between our parties as listed here, with the red line representing the time of the murder. This flurry of calls between our persons of interest demonstrates the usual call pattern that we're seeing. Donna to the defendant, to Catherine Nagbanowa, to Garcia, and back. We have Wendy getting a text message on the day of the murder about her TV repair appointment from her mother, Donna Adelson. It indicates that Best Buy is on their way over to help you with the TV sets in your living room. Maybe she didn't remember which TV was broken. At 8:20, on the day of the murder, Wendy texts the defendant, "This is so sweet." That text was deleted. What does it mean? At 9:19 a.m., there's a phone call between Wendy Adelson and this defendant that lasts about, 30 minutes? No. Like 18 minutes. So this is about 30 minutes before the murder when they hang up. They say they were discussing this TV that was not repairable. The TV that he gave her as a divorce present because it's cheaper than hiring a hitman. Only you guys can assess if you think that might just be a coincidence and nothing more. The Prius is up here at 9:16 a.m. The last phone communication between Garcia and Rivera is at 9:16. Afterwards, the phones turn off, consistent with what Rivera told you. We turn our phones off because we knew we were about to commit the murder, and they don't pop back up until, I think, about 12:30. The bus video catches them turning onto Benton Road to do the murder at 10:51 a.m., whereby they pull up right behind Professor Markel in his driveway. Sigfredo Garcia gets out of the Prius, approaches the driver's window, pointed his gun, and fired. Dan Markel raised his arm to protect himself, but it was no use. Professor Markel was executed at close range, whereby Garcia got back in the Prius and Rivera drove him away. Markel was left there to suffer and die. If not for James Geiger, there's no telling how many hours he might have suffered there alone and unaided. He fought for his life for 14 long hours before he finally succumbed to his injuries. The autopsy confirmed that he was shot twice at close range with a .38 caliber revolver, consistent with what Rivera said they brought as the murder weapon. Next, he was stripped, x-rayed, photographed, and dissected, because he had become a piece of evidence. When Garcia and Rivera get back on the road, they're on a second bus video, leaving town at 10:55. That narrows the time of the shooting down to a 4-minute window between 10:51 when they're seen turning onto Benton and 10:55 when they're caught fleeing the scene. And then we've got the 911 call from Mr. Geiger at 11:01 a.m. The first phone call that either Garcia or Rivera made after turning off their phones to do the murder. So first call after that is at 12:30, and it's Garcia to Catherine Magdanoa. Magdanoa assures them that they'll get their money the next day. This is the same time frame, roughly, that Wendy Adelson was visiting the crime scene. Wendy indicated that she went to turn on a Truscott from Centerville Road, observed a roadblock, and then turned around. But we learned that what she said happened could not have happened. Instead, the roadblock was all the way down here by the blue dot. The blue, I've got 2 blue dots. The one at the top left of the page there is where the roadblock was, that yellow line, 3 to 5 paces down from the scene. Truscott in Centerville is all the way down where the other
Cough sounded like a duck.
is.
Quack.
Visible from the roadblock that she approached and was observed doing so by Officer Brannon were multiple law enforcement vehicles, marked vehicles. There was
There's a duck in the courtroom.
There was a marked vehicle with an officer stationed at the perimeter. It was visible from that position that there was something going on at her kid's house, the house where they lived with their father. And what did Wendy Adelson do upon encountering this roadblock and observing that the police were present on the street where her kids lived? She turned around and proceeded to the liquor store to pick up her bullet bourbon. And the defendant says, well, this is another coincidence because she was asked to bring it to a party. Well, maybe. But the timing of the purchase and the fact that she went out of her way to go by the crime scene on her way to get the bullet bourbon should raise an eyebrow. But it's what she didn't do that's even more suspicious. She didn't ask Officer Brannon, hey, what's going on? She didn't call Danny. She didn't call the police to make any inquiries, or even the daycare to make sure her kids made it there that morning. Remember, Danny had her kids. She didn't even call the daycare. Meanwhile, our shooters are headed back to Miami. They pop up on an ATM camera at 6:45 p.m. in Pembroke Pines, Florida. And then both of their phones are consistent with being at Rivera's residence as of about 7 p.m. that night. At 8:23 p.m., Catherine Magdanoa and the defendant make plans to meet up at his house. At 9 p.m., Donna texts the defendant, outside your house, to which he responds, 10 men. He told you from the witness stand that this text meant that Donna was just passing by his house on her way to Tallahassee, and that they weren't meeting up. But Catherine Magdanoa testified that when she arrived at the defendant's house, the defendant advised her that his parents had just been there, and then he thought his mom had physically washed the money, which was damp when Catherine Magdanoa
Literally washed the money.
Magdanoa finds the defendant to be carrying his gun around and in a frantic state. About the time that these two are meeting up at the defendant's house to do the money exchange, Dan Markel is pronounced dead at TMH. So he says he's going to be about 10 minutes out. Here he is, hitting at home at 9:40 p.m. At 9:46, we see Catherine Magdanoa, consistent with being at Rivera's residence, and then consistent with heading toward the defendant's residence. She turns her phone off, and it stays off for 11 hours. When Magdalena's phone pops back up, it's 9:44 a.m. on Saturday morning, and she's headed back from the defendant's house, or the direction of his house, toward Rivera's residence. That's the money drop location. These phones are consistent with a meeting at 10:30 at Rivera's, which is the time, date, and place that he advised us he received his money from Magdalena. At 12:13 p.m., the defendant reaches out to Magdalena. Defendant, headed to the gym. Are you taking the kids to the beach? It's so nice. Magdalena, it's beautiful, probably the pool. Defendant, nice, have fun. Ethan must be happy. This is when he's texting Magdalena within hours of her leaving with all the money in his safe. All of the money that he stared at and loved on since he was a child. And he wants to know if she's going to the pool. This might be a good time to remind you that the jury room is not a place to check your common sense. We want you to bring it in there. You have heard two wildly different versions of how this thing went down, and they can't both be right. I mean, somebody's trying to sell you a bill of goods. You were selected with the belief that you would be able to cut through the garbage and make sense of the evidence in this case, and render a verdict that speaks the truth. A major problem for the defense theory is the idea that the defendant and Magdalena broke up after the murder, but then grew closer together over the next 2 years as she was collecting his monthly extortion payments. This is one of the more unreasonable parts of the defendant's testimony, or it's definitely in the top 4, along with Latin King extortion payment plans, hitmen that hire themselves to kill someone that their intended future extortion victim hates, and most unreasonable of all is probably that Charlie Adelson developed a so passionate about his unsavory connections. An arrogant man of extraordinary resources, a prize fighter of verbosity, would just lay down and take this in silence. Let's review some of these log checks. We got that one. Then we've got July 22nd. They're talking about the weather. They're talking about prescription shampoo. On October 6th, the defendant says, I love you. It makes me feel good that you care about me. I'm very lucky to have you as a whole in my life. What? Lucky? Lucky. He says, I love you again on 2/24/15. According to him, he's now been making payments for 7 months. He's not on the payroll for 6 months. No Latin Kings have contacted him in any way about collecting his outstanding debt of $195,000. Yet he continues to pay and love on Kathy Magdalena without reservation and without the slightest suspicion that she might be in on this, and without the slightest concern for helping solve the murder of who killed his brother-in-law. Defendant says he believed Kathy Magdalena wasn't taking any of the money even after he put her on the payroll. Checks are going to her because she seemed broke. Defendant's explanation for all the love texts with Kathy Magdalena is that he felt sorry for her. He felt she was in the same position that he was in, being manipulated in the same way that he was. But the fact remains, folks, that she's taking his money. She's connected to the guy that's extorting him. She's connected to the guy that killed his brother-in-law. It defies logic that he would then proceed to grow closer with her. But he has to say that because he can't show other way around these texts. It also defies reason based on what we know of this man, that he would take her for her word and just empty his safe into her purse and then keep paying, presumably forever, without asking any questions, talking about it all, or reporting anything to the police. Magdalena began getting checks from Adelson Institute 2 months after Markel's murder, and she continued receiving checks on that time frame up until the bump. The checks stopped happening at the time of the bump, and you should be asking yourself what that means. Why did the checks stop happening? Well, you would reasonably figure they stopped happening because the parties got spooked, because law enforcement, they suspected the bump could be law enforcement might be getting closer, take her off the payroll. If the defendant was being extorted, as he told you on the witness stand, why would the payment stop? Why would the extortionist care if other extortionists would jump on the payment? Why would the bump impact the defendant's existing obligations to the original Latin Kings? The defendant said he put her on the payroll at Adelson Institute at her request to help her get insurance for her kids, with the understanding that the money was being funneled through her to someone else, and she wasn't actually giving any of the proceeds. She was just going to use that paycheck to assist her with getting subsidized housing, or insurance, I think it was, for her kids. But you can see from this slide, which is dated June 24th, 2014, that she's texting him about getting on the payroll prior to this alleged first extortion effort. He says no problem at that time. This is between the first and second trips. She's asking to be on the payroll. So the explanation from the defendant about why she's on the payroll does not fit the other evidence in this case. So we've got all this evidence that points to the defendant. The motive points to him. When we follow the money, it leads to him. The Prius eventually leads back to him through these conspirators. And each time we have a big event in this case, we see these call flurries where all the parties are calling each other in that structure that I talked about. It goes from this one to this one to this one. But as the defense points out, these folks had independent relationships with each other. that could explain those communication patterns. So without knowing the content, how could we know if they're really talking about the murder, or if these call flurries around these key events are just a coincidence? A conspiracy can be shaped like a cluster with everybody talking to everybody. It can be shaped like a wheel with one central hub talking to all the different spokes. Or it can be shaped like a train car, which is what we have here, where one person talks to only the car in front of them and the car behind them. Law enforcement was asking these same questions. How is this conspiracy shaped? How does it work? How does information flow through it? What are different parties' relative roles within a conspiracy? And the wiretap and bump were designed to answer those questions. Did you notice that Donna Adelson, see how the paper's folded in half? She didn't even look at the paper before she put it in her purse. She didn't think this was a process server. She knew exactly what it was the moment this man approached. And then she just goes about her business. Does she give law enforcement this valuable information that could be used to solve the brutal murder of her son-in-law? I mean, this guy that approached her obviously knows something about who killed Don Martel, right? So surely she went straight to the cops. Nope. Instead, she goes straight to this defendant, who goes straight to Catherine Alabama, who goes straight to Sigfredo Garcia. In that first call after the bump, Donna says she doesn't want to talk on the phone, but the defendant can't leave it alone. He asks, does it involve me or other people? Her answer, well, probably the both of us. Probably both of us. He says, what's that? Probably the two of us. So you probably have a general idea what I'm talking about. He doesn't say, no, I have no general idea what you're talking about. He says, all right. He absolutely does have a general idea what she's talking about. And if they were innocent, as the defendant has claimed, and this was in fact a second extortion attempt, there is not a reason in the world why they wouldn't just say that. I got approached by another one. One came and paid me a visit today. It's happening again. In call B, the defendant asked Donna to take a picture of the bump letter and send it to him, and she refuses. Why? Are the Latin Kings going to see the text? Do you think someone is trying to blackmail you? Maybe. Could be. I don't know. No. That's crazy. That's his response. I'm not adding the emphasis on that syllable. He says it like that. That's crazy. How is it crazy? You're already being extorted by Latin King members. Remember, doctor? So you have to come up with that part now. In call C, defendant calls back again to tell Donna not to talk about things in the apartment place. Why? Why? The Latin Kings aren't in there. And she doesn't ask why, because it's obvious. She says, oh, obviously. Why? Because they might be under surveillance? Well, who cares if they have nothing to hide? Here we see the first use of code on the wire. People don't talk in code if they've done nothing wrong. People do not talk in code if they haven't done anything wrong. Defendant knows. He knows that fact, and that's why I told you we didn't talk in code on the wire. We spoke carefully. Who's on you? Careful of what? Defendant also told you under oath that he regrets that his mom randomly used the word TV in this call as part of her careful talk. The defendant got Wendy Adelson a TV as a divorce present, as a cheaper alternative to hiring a hitman. Dan Martel was killed by a hitman. Then the same TV is Wendy's alibi for the murder, a service appointment that her mother set up for her from South Florida. And then on the wire, Donna says, quote, this TV is going to cause the boat to buckle. Does the defendant say, what TV? What are you talking about, since you inserted a random object into this triple talk conversation? No, he doesn't need to ask what TV, because he knows exactly what she's talking about, and he ferrets it back. They asked you for $5,000. The defendant has advised you that this TV stuff is a coincidence. Is it a coincidence, or is it obviously referring to a conspiracy in this murder? Only you can decide which explanation is credible. The players in this case are smart. They've given a lot of thought to their preparations before this and to their explanations after. We know the seed was planted in early 2013, and it took over 1 year to come to fruition. And they really thought of almost everything. A clever TV-related alibi for Wendy, a frame job for Lacoste, and they insulated themselves by hiring Catherine McDaniel as a middleman, walling themselves off like those train cars, only communicating with the one in front and the one behind, and having no connection to the one further down the line. It's also important to note that in these first few calls, A, B, and C, that Donna Adelson describes the bump to the defendant, and she says the person that approached her mentioned an ex-girlfriend, but she does not say the name Katie or Catherine. Then, with only this very limited information, defendant calls only one of his many ex-girlfriends, Catherine McDaniel. In call D, defendant tells McDaniel that he thinks that this undercover, the would-be extortionist, said her name. We know this is true. The undercover did say Katie, but Donna had not yet told the defendant that. Only communicated in calls A, B, and C. And the only communication on those calls was that the person mentioned ex-girlfriend. On the wire, the defendant says he just called Katie, Catherine McDaniel, because she was his most recent ex-girlfriend. Well, we know that's not true, because there's at least one woman that defendant will admit meets that definition between McDaniel and the bump, and that's Whitney Kick. On the stand, he told you all that you might not be the right Katie conversation. There's several instances that, I'm not sure you're the right Katie, I apologize, I'll feel stupid if you're not the right Katie. That was designed to reassure her that he was not setting her up. Once defendant meets with his mother and gets the details and the paper with the undercover's phone number, he meets up with Catherine McDaniel at Dolce Vita. If they had any evidence, we'd have already gone to the airport. Does that sound like an innocent man? Even if they bug your phone, you're still not talking about any of this. Talking about what? The cops can only bug your phone to get information about the murder. And if you don't have any, then there's nothing to not talk about. The cops aren't going to be doing a wiretap to investigate him getting extorted, which he hasn't even reported to law enforcement. So, not talk about what? Defendant discusses how he's going to start arming himself and is prepared to shoot. He told you under oath from the stand that he was being threatened and extorted by gang members for 2 years at the time that this recording was made. And now he's just starting to think about carrying a gun? Does this sound like a man that's been living in fear for 2 years? Does this sound like a guy who lays down and takes his lumps without question when threatened? Someone comes up to me asking for money in my house? He says that. Lines 23 and 24 on the top there. He says this as if it's a preposterous proposition that somebody would just walk into his house and bring him money. Isn't that what happened to you? How is that preposterous? But wait, what changed? On the next page he says, yeah, and when, guess what? When a fucking police and there's a doctor, there's another citizen standing there with a dead gang member in his fucking driveway, they're not going to come down too hard on me. This is the same man who took the witness stand and swore under oath that he was a victim in this case, and that he had been too paralyzed by fear of gang members to come forward and report his victimization. Dr. Adelson on this recording is a real Dr. Adelson. On the stand, he was so controlled, so knowledgeable about his case, so practiced. But there is no way to explain away his statements on this recording. When the bump happens, you get to observe this defendant in action in his role as fixer, the problem solver. He's working those phones, trying to get Katie to investigate the bump and find out if it's legitimate or not, but also trying to reassure Donna that it's just a cops fishing and it's nothing to worry about. The bump is an actual recorded example of how this defendant acts when he is threatened by a purported extortionist. And how he acts is the complete opposite of how he's telling y'all he acted in the first extortion. Number one, he does not stay quiet about the bump. He talks about it a lot. There are multiple calls with Donna and Katie discussing the bump and what the next steps should be. 2, he takes action. There are multiple in-person meetings with his mom and with Katie and eventually with his dad too about the bump and what to do about it. 3, he investigates the bump. He asks questions. He enlists McDaniel to find out who this is. He talks a lot about his concerns that this will not be just a one-time payment, but could turn into some ongoing problem. And 4, he doesn't take it lying down. He threatens Nazi shit if these people think they can threaten his family and get away with it. He suggests that the problem might require an additional murder. Quote, if he can't do it, I'll find someone else that can. Number 5, he's suspicious. He does not blindly accept the representations of this purported blackmailer that approached his mother. It's clear from the Dolce meeting that he doesn't fully trust Katie. He certainly doesn't trust this purported blackmailer that bumped into his mom. The person that represented himself, the person that approached his mom represented himself as a Latin King gang member, right? I'm a brother of this guy that I met in Broward or whatever. And he's demanding money from her. Yet, the defendant does not take his word for it that he's a gang member. He's not so in fear for his mother's life that he opens the safe and gets $5,000 more out and gives it to Katie. A pittance compared to the amount he's telling you he handed out to the first layer of extortion. Number 6, he doesn't pay. He doesn't bring the $5,000 to Dolce and give it to Katie and say, go pay it. Because that's what I do when I'm threatened to pay. He doesn't pay, he doesn't ever pay. And it's only $5,000. Instead, he analyzes and thinks through and talks about every possible scenario. The defendant says it's one of 2 things, or one of 2 scenarios. 1 being a hoax, 2 being someone actually trying to blackmail his family about this murder. According to him, now he's been blackmailed for 2 years. And he's talking to Catherine McDaniel, he's talking to the person that's been collecting his money all those months. But at no point does he acknowledge the first extortion in the Dolce Vita meeting. Why not? Oh, because she asked me not to talk about it. Well, Times have changed. There's a second extortion effort now, and they're approaching my mother. You think I'm not going to mention the first extortion? Your people have been running their mouths, and now they're attacking my mother. You need to go get this under control. Nothing like that. Next in the Dolce recording, defendant begins to explain how to prove a crime. The police have to put the person at the scene, not just in the car. It's reassuring, however, that even if we, law enforcement, can tie her or the shooters to the Prius, then we'll never be able to charge them. Because they didn't come to Tallahassee, and they didn't shoot anyone, and they didn't do anything wrong, and therefore they can't be held accountable. But that is not the law as the judge has instructed you. Everyone who wanted this done and did some act toward accomplishing it is guilty as the one that pulled the trigger. He's also telling her that even if Rivera has run his mouth to this would-be extortionist, his word alone, that, hey, if he goes to the cops and starts singing, and says, hey, Rivera told me he did this murder, that's not going to be enough. Basically, he didn't use the word hearsay, but that's not going to be enough to proceed on an arrest in this case. This person knows information, so Katie, they'll be back. Whoever it is knows information. Information about what? You have nothing to do with it. Remember that, actor? You've been extorted and that hasn't been reported. What information do they have? You mean information that could be used to solve the murder of your former brother-in-law? If so, why wouldn't you want those people to go to the cops? Why wouldn't you want them to come forward with that information? Then the parties would be held accountable, your extortionist would be jailed, without you having to do almost anything. Next, defendant talks about what will happen if the would-be extortionist undercover is picked up by law enforcement. Next thing you know, this person is singing. Other people start singing. As soon as they have him, he starts calling your name out, and then there's going to be police at your door and at my door. If you're innocent of this murder, why are you worried about the extortionist telling law enforcement whatever it is he knows about the murder of Dan Martell? Defendant says he wants to pay the money. Oh, got ahead of myself. He wants to pay the money, but he's explaining to her the problem with paying is that people might keep coming back or tell their friends who will jump on board as well. He's explaining to her the problems with paying a potential extortionist. What he doesn't say, which is what you would expect if he'd been getting extorted for 2 years, is Garcia, or whoever you've been giving my money to, has obviously been running their mouths, and now they're messing with my mother. Next, he gives instructions. Say my friends have no idea what you're talking about. And frankly, I don't know what you're talking about, but the name sounds familiar if he's incarcerated. So I'm going to give you something as charity to help the less fortunate. But do not contact these people again or they're going to the police. The whole time you're talking, just say, I don't know what's going on. Only use the words help and charity. This isn't the guy described in this first extortion who just rolled over when threatened. He's in control. He's giving the orders. He's giving instructions. Why would you have to give instructions to a blackmailer about how to handle a blackmailer? Next, the defendant says, now he's fucking with his wife, and he's fucking with him, and you fuck with the king himself, you better kill him, because he's going to be a big problem. And he knows who you are. If he can't do it, I'll have someone else do it. Defendant testified that this means the only way to stop Garcia is to kill him. He's not talking about killing him. He's just saying he's a really bad dude, and that's the only way to kill him. The evidence shows that he's saying if Garcia can't handle the undercover, he'll get somebody else to do it. Then he says, and so help me God, if they fuck with my family, it's going to be fucking Nazi shit, because this will be done. I mean, Katie, I don't care what I spend, okay? I swear to God. Defendant and I went back and forth on the stand about what Nazi shit might include, and I think we ultimately agreed that that would be killing. And then he says, I don't care what I have to spend. If you're struggling to figure out who this man is, that's a good clue right there. He's going to buy a solution to this problem, exactly how he paid for a solution to the problem of Danny Martell. Here he wants to know if Garcia has any bad feelings toward him, meaning, is Garcia willing to look into this and handle this for me? Or does he still hate me because I used to date you? If the defendant had really been getting extorted all along, surely he'd say something like, I've been paying all this money, I've been compliant with everything, can you get him to look into this and figure this out? Katie, I'll go to the moon and back for you. Why? Because she did something big for him, and he's going to be indebted to her for the rest of his life. Not because he feels sorry for her, not because she's his protector. He's the protector. He'll go to the moon and back for her because they're met deep in this conspiracy together. Somebody messes with her, they mess with him. Somebody messes with him, they're messing with her. Same thing. Here he's demonstrating an understanding of, a rational understanding of how blackmail works. His example is that you could blackmail someone that's cheating on their wife, meaning you blackmail someone who have dirt on them. You don't go kill somebody and then go to an innocent person and say, I killed your brother-in-law, give him money. At the end of the conversation, the defendant says, you know who this is coming from? Inside. And then I don't have a slide for this, but he goes on to talk about what he will do for her. I don't have to sit here and tell you what I would do. I show you what I could do. You know what I'm saying? You know how I am. I look for things to do. You don't ask me for shit. He accused her of trying to shake him down, so she's trying to extort him. And it states that he would never pay her a dime. In fact, I'm going to get attorney's fees. He's a guy with considerable resources, and he's not a shrinking violet. He's not afraid to use those resources to his advantage. If some street thug was trying to push him around, do you think he'd lay down and take that without doing one thing about it? This slide is a composite of some of the occasions defendant mentions the option of going to the police. And these quotes are specifically in reference to him saying, if you're threatened, you go to the police. If you're threatened, you go to the police. And he has done that before, but he did not go to the police in this case. He didn't go to the police in 2014, not out of fear, as we would have you believe, but because he did this crime. He believed he had gotten away with this crime. He didn't go in 2015 because he was busy that year having the best year of his life. Financially, got in a serious relationship with a new girl, June Mchinda, cruised the intercoastal in his boat. This dude had solved the problem. Everyone was happy. Wendy and the boys were back in South Florida where they belonged. Mom was happy. He was making money hand over fist. June described the beginning of their relationship. June Mchinda described the beginning of her relationship with this defendant in October of 15 as a fairy tale. He is not sweating anything, folks. And that continued until the time of the bump in this case in April of 2016, whereby the defendant became agitated, angry, and anxious. This was before the report concerning him was leaked. At the time of the bump, his behavior changed noticeably. June noticed it, and Ryan Fitzpatrick noticed it as well. He was erratic. Now, why on earth would he be more stressed out after his extortionists were arrested? He seemed perfectly fine to these witnesses when he would have you believe he was in fear for his life. And then he further told you that he was more nervous after the arrest because he feared he'd be falsely arrested. Why? You didn't do anything wrong, you're not going to get arrested. Now, yeah, after the report gets leaked, okay, but why are you so nervous before that? Or were you a hot mess because you knew that we were getting closer? Here's Catherine Magdanoff and the defendant discussing if the undercover could be someone who's trying to be an informant. An informant for what, if not the death of Dan Markell? He's not going to be an informant on the defendant getting extorted, a crime he has not reported. Here they're talking about whether the undercover is getting his information from the inside or the outside. The inside means someone within the murder conspiracy, someone on that board. Or the outside, somebody that one of those people told. Magdanoff says it can only be one of two, apparently. If somebody's that desperate, not from the inside, because there's too much from the inside that the person knows from the outside, so they won't risk it. That's why I know for a fact it's not from the inside. And Adelson says, it's somebody not from the first layer, but probably the second layer. Yeah, and they just made a big mistake, she says. As the wire goes on and the defendant proceeds to continue to analyze the additional bump efforts that law enforcement makes, that text message delivered to the Adelson Institute, he becomes increasingly confident that this would-be extortionist is an undercover agent. And then after listening to Donna's call to the undercover, he is completely sure of that. And you have never seen anybody so elated to be under investigation by the FBI for first-degree murder. You can see this in light of defendant's assertions that he was acting strangely after the bump because he was worried about being falsely arrested. To the contrary, he doesn't seem worried at all. He seems thrilled. I think he says it's fantastic in one of these calls. I want to turn briefly to your jury instructions. The defendant is charged with conspiracy for murder, solicitation for murder, and first-degree murder. Why all three? Because the defendant didn't just ask Catherine Magdanoff to do it. I promise him, he didn't just set a bad action in place toward doing it. It got done. It got done. And that's what makes it new. That's the difference between just inspiring and just inspiring. It got done. This is the difference between just soliciting or just inspiring and being offensive to first-degree murder. To prove the crime of first-degree murder, I must prove to you that this was premeditated. Premeditation is defined as killing after consciously intending to do so. This murder consciously decided to do so. Alright, so this murder was in the works for over a year. It began with the failed relocation efforts, when the defendant first looked into hiring it, and it took root when he enlisted Catherine Magdanoff, and she thereby brought in Garcia and Rivera to do the killing. The planning that went into the killing was extensive, spanning over a year, and it included the solicitation of Magdanoff to find someone to do the murder, the preparation of that letter and that envelope that were placed in Catherine Magdanoff's diaper bag, free of DNA or prints containing the directions for a murder that was delivered to Garcia. 3, the payments that were made in advance for renting the vehicles in the hotel and the expenses associated with those trips. That was part of the planning. 4, the scouting and stalking of Professor Martell that we wanted to on both trips. And 5, the pressure that the defendant applied to Catherine Magdanoff after that first attempt failed. Get it done, get it done, get it done. 6, of course, is the payment itself. He paid for it. All the planning, all the meetings, all the precautions were coming to fruition when that hired gun fired those 2 shots that devastated so many lives on July 18, 2014. When you think about how this case was proven, we started at a single point, the crime scene, and we went in 2 totally different directions. We chased the Prius, and we chased the motive, the bad blood of the in-laws. And the investigation could have solved if any of these, if either of these leads had resulted in a dead end. But all the little breadcrumbs led to the same place. The Prius led to Garcia and Rivera, which led to Magdalena. The bad blood and the divorce led to the Adelson family. The wire confirmed the defendant's specific involvement, not just some Adelson, that Adelson. Then Rivera and eventually Magdalena confirmed his involvement as well. And then we're talking about the principal instruction. We talked about this in jury selection. The defendant didn't pull the trigger, but that doesn't mean he isn't just as responsible as the person who did. Without every player in this conspiracy, the murder doesn't get done. In your jury instructions, it says there are 2 ways to prove defendant's guilt under the law of principles. If he intended that the murder be done, and he did some act, preparing the paper, portraying Mandela, or said some word, get it done, get it done,
Fixing
get it
the
done,
fajitas right now.
that caused or helped, then he's guilty of first-degree murder. Or, 2 ways you can find it. Or, if he intended the murder to be done, and he made or promised payment in exchange for the murder, and the crime was committed by another person, he's guilty of first-degree murder. My burden today is to prove to you this case beyond a reasonable doubt. The jury instructions tell you that a reasonable doubt is not a mere
Damn
possibility.
fajitas, more than Ember.
Imaginary, of course doubt. So when you're stuck back there deliberating, ask yourself, what is reasonable? When you're weighing a piece of evidence and deciding, like, is this a doubt or not? Is it reasonable? Does it fit the other evidence in the case? If you find yourself saying, what if, or a fellow juror saying, what if, without evidence to support whatever it is that comes after the what if, that's speculation. Remind your fellow jurors to get back on track. And that cannot be a reasonable doubt if it's speculation. My burden is to prove the elements of the list of offenses. Nothing more. If you have a question that I have failed to prove the answer to, but it's not one of these elements of the crime that the judge has given you, that is not a reasonable doubt. I'm concerned that you'll get back there and think, well, he didn't pull the trigger, so it's just a conspiracy and solicitation. You guys have worked too hard to render a compromised verdict at this point. I trust that each of you will follow the law and your oath to render a wise and legal verdict in this case. This defendant is guilty of first-degree murder under the principal theory, if ever anyone has been. So the efforts to distract you from this case and what it's really about, including these clear links in this conspiracy and all the evidence that establishes them, the text, the calls, the records, the testimony of Rivera, testimony of Magdalena, all of those things together. The wiretaps, the phone calls, the iCloud messages, and the absence of any other reasonable explanation should all lead you to one conclusion. This is the puzzle. This is the puzzle. The image is clear. When I confronted Rivera with the defense theory that he and Garcia acted alone to kill Markel and then extorted money out of the dentist through Magdalena, he found it laughable. I wrote down his quote, that's a good one. It came out in this trial that in Garcia's trial, Rivera was portrayed as the sole killer, bad guy. He conspired directly with Charlie Adelson, according to Garcia, to commit the murder through WhatsApp or some kind of way. Garcia's lawyer said this was all done without the knowledge and participation of Garcia. Then we learned in Magdalena's trial, Garcia supposedly conspired directly.
You're to rely on your memories of what took place during the testimony and evidence. You may continue with your argument.
Now, here we are in the trial of Charlie Adelson, and the truth has been revealed. Once again, the state got this almost right. That's what you heard in the opening from Mr. Rashbaum. We understandably thought that his client, Mr. Adelson, was the hirer of this murder, but there's a twist. Nothing is as it appears to be.
Ooh,
the defendant is really the
twist.
second victim in all of this. Per his theory, the killers drove to Miami, tries to kill someone they've never met and had no motive to kill in hopes that Charlie Adelson would, 1, not report them for murder, and 2, would instead agree to give them large amounts of cash at that time and on a payment plan over the next, years. Other than failing the smell test, there are a few specific problems with the defense theory. 1, how would the killers have known where to go to kill Markel? How would they know who to kill? How could the killers have known that Dan Markel was scheduled to leave town the day after the murder? 3, possibly the biggest problem, the theory itself makes no sense. Were they just hoping that this would work? We're going to go all the way up there and kill somebody and maybe he'll give us some money. If they were going to confess to doing the murder to Charlie Adelson in order to try to get money, why not just put a gun to his head and take his money? Why not just rob and or extort him with the threat of death by Latin King? That would save you the trip and the murder rap. Their jigsaw puzzle theory is just a pile of pieces that don't fit together. Each explanation is carefully designed to explain one piece of evidence. But how many different explanations can you string together before it's no longer reasonable? How many coincidences can there be before it's no longer a coincidence? This defendant is not a victim. He's a criminal. He's wealthy. He's smart and he's successful. But he's a wealthy, smart, successful murderer. My work is almost done here, and yours is just beginning.
We about to spin a
I
wheel.
trust that
She's
each
about
of you will
done.
do your best to render a wise and legal verdict in this case. A verdict that speaks the truth. A just verdict. And that is a verdict of guilty as charged. Thank you.
Damn.
Yes, Your Honor. Maybe you just have a couple moments to set up.
Let's spin a wheel here. Let's give away some goodies here on Murder Church as we get ready to go into Rash's closings here. We still got a little while left here this morning. Everybody, thank you for hanging out. I do have a brand new video dropping here. Well, it's a short video, but it was a snippet that I took out of last Thursday's reaction video. Those are pretty easy to clip up. If you guys see any of those videos ever, if you could go in and show it a little bit of love, I'd appreciate that. Right now, we're about to spin a wheel for some goodies. Let me turn off my green screen. And yeah, we'll give away a Hell Yeah magnet. We'll give away a coaster for your drinks. And then I think I'm out of the Murder Church magnets, but I think I've got a Publicly Buzzed sticker I can give you guys. Here we go. Good luck, everybody. Oh, I think that's Amanda. Is Amanda still in here? Yeah, Amanda on the red. Ladies and gentlemen, Amanda Callender picking up a victory this morning. Woo, 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 woo. There we go. Hell yeah. Congratulations, Amanda. Getting a victory on a spin on a Sunday morning.
Right while they're
That's what I
setting
like
out
to
the
see.
bill, we'll
Get
sort
some
you
hell
back
yeahs
into
in the
them.
chat for that one. Boom. Love to see it. Amanda, you still in here? I'm getting you on the wheel. Oh, we're getting you in the
Everyone can
winning
be seated.
circle.
Mr. Rauschbaum, you may give the defense's closing.
Thank you, Your Honor. May I please record? Good morning. Good morning. As we discussed in jury selection, Charles Adelson is presumed to be innocent. To overcome that presumption of innocence, the state has the heavy burden of proving beyond a reasonable doubt that Charlie committed the crime that they say he committed.
I have to remind her
We
when
did
she
not
gets
have to
back in
present
here.
any evidence whatsoever.
Remind me.
That's how our system works. We did not need to prove
Hell
his
yeah.
innocence. As you go through
All right,
the trial,
puzzle pieces in the chat.
you were told that you needed
Rash
to
is about
evaluate
to put this entire thing in perspective for us.
evidence through a lens of innocence, a presumption of innocence. Now, I think we did prove his innocence in this trial, but that isn't the standard. That's not what you go back there and deliberate. What you see in this trial is a mountain of reasonable doubt that arises from the evidence itself, from the conflict in the evidence, and from the lack of evidence. The state's first question to Mr. Adelson, when he was on the stand, was something called Occam's razor. Their first question was referring to their belief that the simple answer is the preferred answer. You might recall them asking that question, the very first question they asked in this trial. Occam's razor, that proposition that the simple answer is the preferred answer, is the exact opposite of what our criminal justice system is about. See, Occam's razor is a guess. We don't guess in this country. We don't assume people to be guilty. We presume them to be innocent. And sometimes the simple answer is the wrong answer. Sometimes things aren't so simple.
Put it together
And
for
that's
us,
what we have
Rash.
in this case. I talked to you in opening about puzzle pieces. I talked to you in opening about how puzzle pieces wouldn't fit. And that's exactly what you saw repeatedly in this case. Just one of those puzzle pieces is enough for reasonable doubt. But here we have a mountain of them. And let's talk about them briefly. Government Exhibit 59. This is their conspiracy chart. The first puzzle piece that doesn't fit is motive. See, Charlie Adelson didn't have a motive to upend his life. Charlie
Puzzle
Adelson had a good
pieces
life.
in the chat.
His business was booming. He was supportive of his sister, but he didn't wake up in the morning thinking about Professor Marquette. He didn't go to bed at night thinking about the problems his sister was having. He was living his life. Now, was it a bitter divorce? Absolutely. But through all of those crazy emails, Are there any examples of any violence? None. Those emails, we spent about 10 minutes hearing about them this morning. Not Charlie's ideas. By the way, those emails weren't even done. You heard from Wendy Adelson. She never offered any of those things to Professor Markel. She never threatened him with any of those things. Crazy ideas? Yes. An upset mother? Yes. Pushing each other's buttons? Yes. But ladies and gentlemen, even the $1 million offer you heard, lawyers were consulted to make sure it was legal. A far cry from a murder. Their relocation motive. Relocation was denied a year before the murder. And by the way, Wendy Adelson and her 2 boys moving to South Florida would have no impact on Charlie Adelson. Would he be happy that they were there? Sure. Would it change his life? No. Now, you may wonder, why did we spend so much time on cross proving Wendy Adelson's innocence? The reason being is because on their exhibit, take a look who's in their conspiracy. They circled her for you in their opening cross. See, they were guessing about Wendy just like they're guessing about Charlie. What the evidence showed is that Wendy wanted to leave South.
Shit, Jersey Jen coming through, helping us out this morning. She says, put Leia on the wheel, and also gives us a $2 holla. Thank you so much, Jen. I appreciate that. Got you, Leia, on the wheel.
But when it was denied in the summer of 2013, she made a life here in Tallahassee. What the evidence showed, and remember, I tried to get an email after email after email, and they fought me on it. Ask yourself why. Ask yourself what they were afraid for you to see. You saw that she made appointments after the time of the murder. She made them before. You saw she made plane tickets from Tallahassee to other places in the fall and winter. You saw that she got a new divorce lawyer. You saw that she was making play dates. And significantly, you saw that the entire family was making plans to come up here and see her celebrated for her book at FSU with incoming students. Why is that significant? Because their theory, their simple theory, is that she was part of a murder. It's a puzzle piece that does not fit. And we're going to talk about her trip down Trescott on the 18th, because that's a puzzle piece that they keep on trying to pound and doesn't fit, but we'll do that a little later. The next puzzle piece that doesn't fit. Who had the kids? See,
Every time he says puzzle piece, I'm throwing it in the chat.
Is that the Adelsons love these 2 boys. But they would have you believe that they hired hitmen twice. And both times, who had custody of the kids? They would take a risk that these boys would be injured, killed. Does that make any sense? The June attempt. Remember, Wendy and Danny shared the kids 50-50. The June attempt, we learned from their witness, Luis Rivera, Danny had custody of the kids. And we learned that he wouldn't do the murder because the kids were there. The July attempt, they show you a text message about Professor Markel being in town. And they show you a text message where Wendy's asking for the boys on the 16th. The murder's done on the 18th. Who has custody of the kids? Professor Markel. It doesn't make sense. There is no chance if these people were behind the murder, they would take any risk that those boys would be in the crosshairs. Use your common sense. It's a puzzle piece that they cannot explain. And you know what else doesn't make sense? Is their alibi argument. So they make a big argument about this Best Buy repairman coming that morning, how it was set up for an alibi. The argument, by the way, makes absolutely no sense, because then they argue that Wendy purposefully went down the street of where she was supposed to get an alibi from. But let me ask you this question. Again, use your common sense. If the Adelsons and Charlie wanted to set up an alibi for not only Wendy, but themselves, why not do the murder on July 5th, when each and every one of them is at a birthday party for their father in South Florida? Wouldn't that have been a better alibi? They didn't do that because they're not behind the murder. They didn't know it was going to happen. They have nothing to do with it. It's a puzzle piece that doesn't make sense. It's reasonable doubt. Sigfredo threatened Charlie. Now the state has them as co-conspirators. The testimony is clear. Sigfredo Garcia.
Oh, Jersey Jen popping off in the chat here. $2 says put Brad Fine on the will. Brad, welcome to the will. Oh yeah.
Charlie
Adelson. The best.
The testimony is clear from their own witnesses that Sigfredo Garcia wanted to kill Charlie Adelson.
Brad, I know Brad's new in here. You have the possibility, Brad, of winning some goodies here now that you are on the will. So once we get 12 names on this thing, I'll do a spin, and yeah, you'll have an opportunity again to win some of these trinkets that I give out here through Publicly Buzzed. Thank you so much, Jen, again.
In fact, you hear that on March 11th, 2014, just 8.5 weeks before the first attempt.
Hey, Ember, thanks for popping in. Hope you had a good Halloween. Get ready for the holidays. We're getting into Thanksgiving.
And he wanted to run him over with his car. He wanted to kill him. He's going to do that 8 weeks before he does a murder for him? Makes no sense. But it gets worse. You heard testimony in this courtroom from repeated witnesses, both law enforcement and otherwise, that on July 1st, just 17 days before the murder, Sigfredo Garcia tried to run Charlie off the road, threatened him, left a threatening voicemail that he was going to kill him. Left it with his dad, but thought he was leaving it for Charlie. It's just 17 days before the state wants you to believe he went and did a hit for him. It doesn't make any sense. It's a puzzle piece that doesn't fit. Now they'll come up here in rebuttal, and they'll probably say something.
Go, Beers in the chat. Hell yes in the chat. Murder Churches in the chat. Meowder Kitties in the chat. Come on now. We got a bunch of new members in here. Thanks too. Forrest Nelson. Hell yeah, Forrest. Well, you just, first of all, when we get something like that going, I got to go full screen because I'm going to pump up the book club. These 5 folks now have the opportunity to join a brand new book this Tuesday night after the show, after reactions on Tuesday. We're going to go directly into the book club, which only is for the members here in the Buzz Nation. So, if you are a member, which 5 new people are, you get to come in and finish the book that we're on now, but you can also see what's going to be the new book and see if that may interest you. So if a book club sounds cool, you have this person to thank right here, and that's Forrest Nelson. Who's getting it, first of all? Seagate 1, welcome in here. Lieutenant Teletubby, welcome in here. Cheney, welcome back. JD, welcome in here. And then Walk Away Classy, great name. Boom, everybody welcome in here, and you all have the opportunity to, again, join up on the book club on a Tuesday night, immediately following the live here when we watch. Now, it used to be Murder Church. I used to say book club after Murder Church. A lot of things are shaking up this week. We're doing 2 nights now of reaction videos because I have such a good time watching them, just to be quite freaking honest with you. Thursday nights have been a blast, and I think a lot of people are enjoying them. And hopefully they'll come through on Tuesdays and enjoy them as well. And we'll go straight out of reaction Tuesdays into the book club now. Boom. Awesome. And then Jersey Jen. Holy shit, rocking and rolling. We're trying to finish out another wheel, is what it looks like. And she says put Daria on that thing. Daria is getting on the wheel thanks to Jen. Thank you so much, Jen. I appreciate that. Thanks, everyone, for joining me this morning. Boom. Amanda, you won the last wheel. Holy shit, perfect timing coming in here. So congratulations. Amanda, you just won the wheel that I spun after Georgia got done with her closing statement. Boom. Bada bing, bada boom, bada bing, bada boom. Murder Church on the air. And again, next Sunday, we start a brand new trial here on Murder Church, which I do already know what it's going to be. I've already picked it out, and it is going to be a doozy. I'm not giving it away just yet. I may do some teasers on X. I may show a video when I finally say, and you'll have to be making sure you're tuning in on Tuesday and Thursday and Friday as well, because more teasers could happen. But all I'm giving away right now is it's going to be a female murderer. That will be. That's right. You won the last wheel. Congrats. Congrats.
Like, Sigfredo didn't know what he was doing, Katie was siloing him of information. Ask yourselves if that makes any sense. Ask yourself if after the first attempt, he doesn't know exactly who he's killing. It's reasonable doubt, ladies and gentlemen. It's a puzzle piece that they cannot explain.
Puzzle pieces.
The hitman joke. We learned in this trial that Charlie repeatedly made this off-color joke. And let me say something aside. You don't have to like Charlie Adelson. There are plenty of reasons not to like him. That doesn't make him a murderer.
There's plenty of reasons not to like him. Charlie's like, whoa!
This hitman joke,
Coming
we
in
learned
hot, bud.
that Charlie made it with people he hardly knew. That he made it repeatedly. We learned from their own witness that at a March 11th dinner, this is Jeff Lacoste, when he first met Charlie, Charlie made the joke. Ask yourselves, does it make any sense for a guy who is about to do a hit, about to murder someone, to go around town and advertise it? Doesn't fit. Reasonable doubt. Ask yourselves, does it make more sense for Catherine McBanaman, a professional liar and con artist, to hear the joke, to hear the $1 million offer, and start to get ideas? They want to call it coincidences. It's not a coincidence. Criminals do not advertise what they are about to do. That makes no sense. Reasonable
Well,
doubt.
somebody with a big mouth like Charlie, I don't know about it.
Payment evidence. Miss Kappelman mocked in her cross of Charlie that this was a murder by layaway. Meaning, that doesn't make any sense. We agree with her.
So much doesn't
It
make
doesn't make any
sense.
sense.
Like literally washing
Murders for
money.
hire are not done by layaway. But you know what is done by layaway? Extortions. See, we learned in this trial that Catherine McBanaman got paid every month. She denied it. Their own witnesses proved it. We learned that she got paid $3,000 a month, $2K in cash and $1K in checks from the Adelson Institute. By the way, if Charlie's part of a murder, they're telling you how smart he is. Does it make any sense that he would create a paper trail of checks from his business to pay for the murder? It makes no sense. But aside from that, you heard from Special Agent Sanford. He has done around a dozen murder for hires. Never a payment over time. He's seen extortions like that, but never someone getting paid over time. The money drop was the next day. You heard about that. Ask yourself, if this was a murder for hire, why was payment not made before? See, the state gave you examples of days before the first attempt and days before the murder, where Charlie Adelson was with Catherine McBanaman. If it's a murder for hire, why didn't he pay her before?
Jay, thanks for that share.
You heard on the night of the murder and the night of the extortion, she had to go run around town to find a babysitter for her kids. If it was planned, if Charlie was behind it, why would she not have it planned out that way? Why would he have not paid her before? See, because he had no idea it was going to happen. That's the only thing that makes sense. By the way, why would she need a babysitter at all if it was a murder for hire? If it's a murder for hire, how much time does it take to go pick up money? Go to the house, get the bag of money, and leave. See, the thing is, she didn't know how much time it was going to take.
Halloween.
And you know why she didn't know how much time it was going to take? Because she didn't know how he was going to react. It wasn't just a pickup of the money on July 18th. It was a setup of an extortion. Now, we're going to get more into the extortion, but it's amazing to me that the state still doesn't understand what happened. And I wonder if they don't understand or they're trying to confuse you. So let me make this crystal clear now, and we'll get back to it later. On the night of the 18th, Charlie Adelson had no idea about anything about the Latin Kings. He had no knowledge of the Latin Kings. He doesn't find out anything about the Latin Kings until he's in the car with Catherine McBanaman moments before he goes into Dolce Vita. On the night of the 18th, what he's told is that Catherine McBanaman said she spoke too much and that a friend of hers had done this. Nothing about any Latin Kings. The payment structure makes no sense. The whole purpose of a murder for hire is to hire someone who you are not associated with, who you are not tied to. But yet, they would have you believe that Charlie would give them checks, would continue to text message with them, would continue to give them gifts, because he was tied to a murder for hire. It shows just the opposite. It shows it's an extortion. Reasonable doubt. Katie's lies. Let me first start by apologizing if any of you were offended by the tone of my voice during my cross of Catherine McBandler. See, the thing is, I think you all know me pretty well by now. I'm passionate. And I believe in the system. And the one thing I hate is when someone comes in this courtroom and lies.
Why?
I hate even more when a murderer comes in this courtroom and lies. What we know is that the state called Catherine McBandler. Talk about desperation in trying to prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt. They called a woman who lied under oath in her first trial. They called a woman who lied under oath in her second trial. They called a woman who tried to get Sigfredo Garcia to lie for her in her second trial. But worse, they called a woman who just a year ago lied during her proffers. She denied it. And by the way, they didn't question her on it. But you heard from their own witnesses, including Special Agent Sanford, that he walked out of the room. And he walked out of the room not the first 10 minutes. He walked out of the room over 3 hours after she started speaking. Because as he put it, what she was saying made no sense. And they would have you base this man's freedom on her words? And why did she lie? Because it's her only way out. But her lying didn't stop there. She lied to you. We caught her in lies. She said she didn't get paid overtime. We know she got paid overtime. She said she didn't know when the murder happened, when the plan changed to a murder, and that the plan was to murder Professor Martel. You've heard the wires.
We've heard the wires.
We
Don't
see
bring
her
that
lying
up.
to her co-conspirator, according to them, Charlie Adelson, on the wires themselves. We see her saying repeatedly to him that she has called the number hundreds of times, that it's a non-working number, that the number just rings, that they left a voicemail. All of those are lies. By the way, you know who she doesn't lie to?
You've seen the wires with your own eyes. Slams down his
Secret
fist. Listen.
You know who else she lied to? Luis Rivera. We heard that. She lied to him about the purpose of the trip. She lied to him about the lady being on the street. She told Luis that Wendy was on the street the day before the murder with her kids.
Hell yeah.
And you may remember the judge read the stipulation in, which both sides agree on. It shows that Wendy could not be on the street with the kids. Luis Rivera didn't lie. She lied to him. She lied to him about the amount of money they got. She told him it was $100,000, when it was $138,000. And she never told him that she was getting paid every month. Remember, Rivera wanted to do a robbery. Miss Kappelman comes up here in her closing.
He's cooking.
And she says, why did they just do a robbery?
Cooking.
Wouldn't that have been easier? Remember, Rivera brought up that very point. And what is he told by Sigfredo Garcia? It can't be a robbery. Katie says we have to do it this way. Ask yourself why. The bottom line is, Charlie Adelson was conning. On the night of the 18th, he was scared. He didn't think she was part of it. He thought she was protecting him. That's why he thought the money didn't go up every month. That's why he thought he wasn't getting visited by any bad guys. And that made it closer to her over time. Reasonable doubt, a puzzle piece doesn't fit. Immunity. She was offered a get out of jail free card, and she didn't take it. She was offered it before her first trial. Now she had an explanation for that. I didn't want to turn on my husband. But what about after he was convicted and his appeals are over? Remember, her first trial was in 19. Her second trial was in 2022. See, she couldn't take the immunity offer because when you take the immunity offer, you have to tell the truth. And if you're caught telling a lie, you not only lose immunity, but you've now confessed. You now have no defense. She knew she extorted Charlie. She knew she tricked him. She knew he wasn't part of the murder, and that's why she never took the immunity deal. Reasonable doubt. Puzzle pieces that no matter how hard you try to hammer them in, don't fit. And let me ask you a question. Ask yourself, why, when the state called her as a witness, they didn't ask her one question about the wires? Go back and look at your notes. Not one question about what was said and meant at Dolce Vita. Not one question of what they talked about in the car before Dolce Vita. And then, Charlie Adelson takes the stand. And they have an opportunity to rebut him. They have an opportunity to call her back to the stand and say, you're not going to believe this crazy, unreasonable story that Charlie just wove. But they don't call her back to the stand. They don't ask her any of those questions because they don't trust her. Because they know that she can't answer those questions. Because the truth is, they have doubt. You heard it. They have doubt. That's why it took them 6 years after her arrest to even charge Charlie Adelson. Ask yourselves, why were they so afraid to ask her any of those questions?
Get in here.
Security cameras.
Hey, I'm not a hater
Now,
of Rash yet.
let me be clear.
I thought he's been all
In
right.
closing,
I
Ms.
like to make fun of him, but I mean, he's doing the best he can.
Appleman said that no one testified that Charlie's demeanor changed in 2014. No one was asked about that. He doesn't meet June and Chinda until 2015. But what we do know is his behavior did change. What we know from evidence in the record is that he started sleeping with a gun.
Sleeping with a gun.
What we know from evidence in the record is that he invested in camera equipment for his house and for the office. Now, the state comes up here and they say, well, there's this email or text message from months earlier where he's talking about putting in camera equipment. True. Guess what he didn't do months earlier? He didn't put in camera equipment. But guess what he does just weeks after he's extorted? Just weeks after Professor Markel is brutally murdered in broad daylight in his driveway. He puts in camera equipment. If he's a co-conspirator, who's he afraid of? According to them, he's the guy behind it. The camera equipment is to protect himself against himself?
I know.
Reasonable doubt.
Puzzle pieces.
The wires support what happened on the night of the 18th. They support that he was extorted. Now, I'll first talk about State's Exhibit 130. You'll remember this when I talk about it. It's 21 months after the murder and the extortion. It's before the bump. It's one of these calls about Dave. And it's very interesting and scary what happened in this trial on this call. The state plays 18 minutes of the call, and then they cut it off. They ask the witness how important the call is because it's before the bump. Meaning there's no reason whatsoever that anyone is thinking that they're being listened to. 21 months after the murder, 21 months after the extortion. And at 20 minutes and 40 seconds in the call, 2 minutes after they cut it off, you hear what Charlie Adelson thought about Professor Markel. You hear him describe what happened to him as a tragedy. His own words, in real time. You hear him say to his mom that Professor Markel is not replaceable. They didn't want you to hear that. I want to go back briefly to the security cameras. Ms. Kappelman comes in here today and she talks about the times that Charlie went to the police. And she brings up examples of filing a lawsuit. She brings up an example of a dispute with a girlfriend. Those are very different than being told you have 48 hours to pay or you and your family are going to get killed. Especially taken in the context that just 9 hours earlier, Professor Markel was shot in broad daylight, executed. Reasonable doubt, a puzzle piece that just doesn't fit. Let's talk more about these wires. State's Exhibit 108, that's all the wires together. There's subparts of it. And I want to draw your attention to A, B, and C. These are the first 3 calls with Donna Adelson after the bomb. And what you see on these calls is that initially, for at least the first call and a half, Charlie Adelson has no idea whatsoever what she's talking about. None. Now ask yourself, if you did a murder with someone, wouldn't that be the first thing on your mind? He has no clue what she is saying. He's talking about Yelp. He's talking about the IRS. He's talking about being sued. He has no clue. She says it's about the 2 of us. We've already done this.
Just the 2 of us.
We beat a horse to death on
We can
this.
make it if we try. Just the 2 of us.
It's about the 2 of us. You were extorted, and now I'm being extorted.
I'm freezing. I need to put my hoodie on.
It doesn't even make sense under their theory of murder.
I'll be right back.
By the way, on those first calls, she wants to meet with him when Wendy and Harvey are not around. I'm confused. I thought they're co-conspirators, according to the state. A puzzle piece that makes no sense. By the way, he starts to figure out what it is when she brings up blackmail. And when she brings up, and you can listen to it, you'll see the hesitation in his voice that he needs to bring cash when they meet the next day for lunch. He starts to figure it out. And what does he immediately shift his attention to? Don't take my word for it, you can listen to the wires. Was the guy white or Hispanic? Was the guy wearing a disguise? Was the guy threatening? Did he give you 48 hours? He's trying to figure out if it's the same people. Now, they talk about why would he call Katie? His mom doesn't say anything about Katie, and he has other ex-girlfriends. Well, he has only one ex-girlfriend that on July 18th came to him and said, you have to pay money, I'm not part of this. Because if you don't pay money, they're going to kill you. And see, they ignore D, 1392, part of the same exhibit. He slips. 3 minutes and 34 seconds into this recording, Charlie slips. See, he's got to be careful on these calls when he's talking to Katie, because he doesn't want her to think that he's setting her up and setting up her friend, whoever that might be. He doesn't know at this point. He has a guess, but he doesn't know. And the reason why he has to do that is because he needs her help. She is the one who is most equipped to help him figure out, is this a bad guy? Because if it's a bad guy, he's worried they're going to get killed. She says his first instinct isn't to pay. We're going to get to that. His absolute first instinct in Dolce Vita is to pay. You can listen to it. So he has to be careful in how he talks to her, but 3 minutes and 34 seconds into D1392, he says the following. I mean, you didn't do anything with my mom. And she responds, what would I do with your mom? And he says, just checking. What could that possibly mean if he's not referring to the extortion? How could that possibly be talking about a murder for hire? It cannot be. 3 minutes and 34 seconds in, give or take. D1392. Don't take my word for it. Listen to it. On the wires, Charlie Adelson's way of calming down his mom, and what he is hoping for is that it is the police. How does that make any sense if he did a murder? He did a murder, but he's hoping that the police are onto him? It makes no sense. See, he's hoping it's the police because he didn't do a murder. And if it's the police, no one's going to get killed. They went through Dolce Vita with you, and I'll probably go through it a little bit more with you later. But let me say this. Listen to it for yourselves. Think about the parts that they left out in their closing. How about the 9 times that he says something to the effect of, we have nothing to hide. We didn't do anything. How about the 36 times he says that on the wires? How about when he says in Dolce Vita, these people only know part of the story, or they think they know part of the story? What could he possibly be talking about if he did a murder for hire? What he's saying is, they think we did a murder for hire. They don't understand I was extorted. They think they know the whole story, but they only know part of the story. And that's why I hope it's the police. In Matsuri, he says twice, the funny thing is. Listen to it in the context. What's funny is they don't realize that the sting they put together is close to the truth. PP 2325.
Way back.
7 minutes in. They opened on it. But they don't want to play it. They skipped over it. It's in evidence. You can hear it.
It's really
There's talk about it being someone not from the first layer,
crank the
but
heat a little.
probably the second layer. Talking about extortion. The first layer is when he was extorted on the evening of July 18th, and his payments for the 21 months. The second layer is the bump. He's trying to figure out, is it the police? Is it a copycat? Or is it the same guys? On the wires, who are the only people that call and speak with undercover? They call from their cell phones. Don't make a big deal about Star 67. They call from their cell phones. They don't get burner phones. The only two people that speak with the undercover, Charlie Adelson, Donna Adelson. Ask yourself why. Reasonable doubt. A puzzle piece doesn't fit. Look at the text messages. Now, I fought to get in these text messages. Ask yourself why I had to fight so hard.
Which I'm going to object to Your Honor's rulings and
Sustained.
legal objections.
Please move on.
Look at the text messages that are in evidence. Nothing out of the ordinary. Everything explained. He didn't hide or flee. Not like Catherine McBanoa. Another lie she told you all. She said she didn't know it was the police outside. She didn't hide. You heard she did. You heard she got a burner phone. II 1393. 1 minute and 47 seconds in. A call between Catherine McBanoa and Sigfredo Garcia. 1 minute and 47 seconds in, Katie tells Sigfredo that she's worried, in essence, that Charlie's parents, Donna and Harvey, are going to go to the police. If they're co-conspirators in a murder for hire, why would she be worried that they're going to go to the police? It doesn't make any sense.
Don't make no damn sense.
Simply put, these puzzle pieces and others
Dude,
do
puzzle
not fit the
pieces
state's
is
theory.
his entire, like,
Why? Because while they
philosophy
want to
here
make this
in
a
life.
simple explanation, while they use words in closing 13 times could, 6 times maybe, 2 times maybe not, 3 times suspicious, 6 times coincidence, that is not beyond a reasonable doubt. That is not what we do in this courtroom. We presume innocence. We don't guess. We don't ignore things that don't fit into the theory.
We don't ignore things here, okay? He's yelling at them. It's belligerent.
Now I want to turn to the testimony of Charlie.
Belligerent for Charlie.
And I will try not to be repetitive. The first group of witnesses, we asked very few questions. We don't disagree that the murder of Professor Markel was horrific. They showed you those pictures today. I can't look at them. These people that killed him were animals.
Garbage.
He agreed that the police work was phenomenal.
Did you
That's
survive
why they-
through the weekend after the after the Evil Dead?
Caught the 3 people who did this. You also remember, check your notes, that none of those original witnesses said a word about Charlie Adelson. Now, the first witness of substance was Agent Sanford. He came twice, so we're going to deal with him each time. The first time he came on the stand, let me say this. He's an honest and truthful guy. He's exactly what you want from a witness. Compare him to Catherine McBanoa. Compare him to Ryan Fitzpatrick. We'll get to that. They put in emails to him, and they showed that there was distress in the family, that there was anger over the relocation issue and divorce. They also showed that the relocation issue was denied in 2013, the summer of 2013, a year before the murder. We saw that there were very few emails from Charlie Adelson, although he was aware of some of the crazy emails. And he would say things like, good idea. We learned about the $1 million offer and how Charlie was going to pay 1/3 of the $1 million with the hopes of getting paid back. And we learned through Agent Sanford that there were emails that showed that this $1 million offer, the Adelsons consulted a lawyer on to make sure they were doing things legal. We learned that in his experience, murders for hire aren't paid this way. We've already talked about that. And we learned that there is ongoing discussions about where the kids were going to go to school in the fall of 2014. Ask yourselves, why do you need those discussions if you know you're about to kill a guy and relocate? And then we heard from Wendy Adelson. And again, we spent a lot of time crossing Wendy Adelson because we wanted to show you that their theory on her was absolutely wrong. And one of the things I didn't mention earlier, in addition to the plane tickets and the hiring of the divorce lawyer and the scheduled meetings and the custody arrangements in August, you see in Defense Exhibit 6 that she's trying to buy a house. Now, they talk about a house on Halloween, Halloween of 2013, that Charlie convinced her not to get. What about when she's looking for a house just a month or so before the murder? No evidence that anyone's trying to stop her then. She testified that she was not worried about disbarment. And by the way, we called her lawyer to the stand to buttress her testimony because the same motion was made against her. And she testified she wasn't worried about disbarment either. She testified that she never made the $1 million offer or the Christianity email threats. We showed through emails and on the wires to support her testimony that after the murder, she was scared and sick. You don't have to take Charlie's word for it, and you don't have to take my word for it. It's on the wires. On the wires themselves, it talks about how Wendy is finally getting over this.
It's on the wires.
We showed through stipulation that there's no way she and the kids could have been on the road the day of the 17th. And we showed that through her that Professor Markel posted in a lot of places about his trial. Now, we have no idea how Catherine Magbanua and Sigfredo Garcia knew where Danny lived and knew when he was going to be out of town. We don't know, because it had nothing to do with us. But we showed you possibilities of where the information could have been found. That, ladies and gentlemen, is a definition of reasonable doubt. As opposed to some crazy explanation, and we'll get to it, that just 3 weeks after dating, he put some letter in her bag that she doesn't know what the letter is about and what it says, but it must have been that. Does that make any sense? And we showed that on the day of the murder, Wendy Adelson voluntarily was interviewed for hours without a lawyer. She gave her phone. She let them search her car. She let them search her computer. And she named everyone who could have done this. Everyone that came to mind, the first person she named was herself. And yes, she mentioned the hitman joke. And then she said, but he wouldn't do it. By the way, talk about a puzzle piece that doesn't fit. His co-conspirator goes to an interview with law enforcement on the day of the murder and tells law enforcement about the hitman joke. Does that make any sense?
Charlie said no.
It does if
No,
they're
it
not
does
co-conspirators.
not.
It does if they had nothing to do with the
Although
murder.
the jury can see me clearly
Reasonable doubt.
agreeing with my lawyer.
She talked about her problems in the relationship with Jeff Lacoste, how he was stalking her and jealous. She was adamant that Charlie never actually looked into hiring a hitman, that was a lie. And was adamant that the dinner they had weeks later, no one called it a celebration dinner.
Prison Charlie makes his final
Her
appearance.
testimony, a state witness, did just the opposite of proving their case. It gave more reasonable doubt, and I would submit proved innocence. The next witness was Officer Brandon. His testimony was short, but indicative of the state's case. He testified that Wendy drove down Trescott. Again, she explained why. But more importantly, the state tried repeatedly to pound this evidence in to show that Catherine Magbanua made a phone call, got a phone call at 12:30 and said, I know it's already been done. Remember that testimony? And the state was desperate to say that that phone call somehow came from Wendy Adelson. But look at their own exhibit. The phone call is at 12:30. They showed it to you today. Look where Wendy Adelson is at 12:30. She's nowhere near the residence. According to the state's theory, she must have mind-reading ability. But yet they continue to try to pound that puzzle piece into place.
Puzzle piece! He's really thinking
Well,
of that
that-
puzzle piece terminology.
Ask yourself why.
Hard. Puzzle piece.
Jeffrey Lacoste. The jury instructions will tell you
It's
to
not
evaluate
fit.
bias in witnesses in determining their truthfulness. it is not up for dispute that Mr. Lacoste was a jilted lover who was stalking Wendy Adelson. You heard that from Hale, Officer Hale, the later witness. More importantly, though, Jeffrey Lacoste thought that the Adelsons and Wendy had tried to frame him. He was upset about that. He thought he tried to frame them. He thought they tried to frame him for this murder. And so his testimony was shaped by that anger. The truth is, he had a nice time at dinner with Charlie on March 11th at Yardbirds. There's a text message in real time, unsolicited, confirming that. Charlie didn't send him a text, he sent Charlie a text. The truth is, when he talks about Charlie having associations with the Cuban element, whatever he testified to, by the way, no one in this case is Cuban. I'll tell you a secret, Sigfredo Garcia is not Cuban. Luis Rivera is not Cuban. Made up. He admitted that even though he supposedly thought he was part of a murder, he would have gotten back together with her. Doesn't make any sense. He says that Wendy told him that Charlie really looked into hiring a hitman. He says she told him this when he was waking up. Does that make any sense? He says that after they broke up, she told him it was a celebration dinner, meaning she's telling him, I get murdered to Charlie. Does that make any sense? And then you hear about these notes.
Let me get that fixed.
You hear it from Officer Hale and a bunch of notes. I never saw the notes. You know why? He destroyed them. Ask yourself why. His testimony makes no sense, is biased, and should be discounted as nonsense. As someone who is angry because he thinks they tried to frame him. Stephen Webster. Honest. Nice. This was Professor Markel's divorce lawyer. But notice something. He's not a divorce lawyer. He's a criminal lawyer. Never litigated anything in the case. But yet they call him to try to bolster some sort of motive that Wendy Adelson was so fearful, and the family was so fearful, that she was going to be disbarred. That these motions were going to be successful. When I asked him, did you know that the judge was frustrated with Professor Markel? He had no idea, because he wasn't the lawyer at the time. June Chindo. She testified that Charlie sleeps with a gun. Why would he sleep with a gun if he was part of the murder? She testified that during the bump, she wasn't actually clear, but I'll give him this. During the bump and after that, he was upset. He was acting weird. Of course he was. He didn't know whether his family was about to get killed. He didn't know who was extorting them the second time. She also testified how Charlie flew out of the country and always returned. Ryan Fitzpatrick. To me, this witness sums up the state's case. And it's scary. He had no first-hand knowledge of anything.
Boom! Austin Rains making it rain. $9.99. Hungry for a piece of the wheel pizza. Happy Sunday, y'all. Publicly buzzed for life. Hell yeah. Thank you so much, Austin. I appreciate that. And we got a wheel rocking and rolling. I need to do a count here, because it's been going here this morning. Thank you so much. Let me get you on here. Where we at? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So we're only 3 away from a new wheel, and we've already had a spin this morning. Great morning. Again, Austin, thank you so much.
And you learn only through cross-examination that years after the murder, when he was about to be sued by Charlie, he threatened him to go to the FBI and say things bad about him. You learn that just days before coming in this courtroom, he's on a blog taking bets about whether he can cause him to serve the rest of his life in prison. Disgusting. Luis Rivera. The state still doesn't get it. I'm not going to discredit his testimony, just the opposite. To me, Luis Rivera's testimony was in some ways the most significant. He's an animal, but he was truthful. He said what he knew. It proved firsthand why you must find Charlie Adelson not guilty of all 3 counts. It proved firsthand reasonable doubt. It was an aha moment. Let me remind you of it. He admitted that Katie was the mastermind of the killing. He said that everything had to be cleared through Katie. He said that everything he and Sigfredo knew came through Katie. He said he wanted to do a robbery, but Katie said he couldn't do a robbery, that it had to be done this way. We went through all the lies that Katie told him through Sigfredo, the lady being on Trescott, the purpose of the trips, the amount of money. He now understood why he got $37,000 instead of $35,000. We went through the fact that he knew nothing about the payments over time or the gifts to Katie. And here was the punchline. When asked, could this have been an extortion and not a murder for hire? Could they have lied about that to you too? His answer was yes. One of the two shooters admitted to you that knowing what he knows now, this could have been an extortion. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the definition of reasonable doubt. Am I going to discredit him? No. I'd never talked to him before. The first time I met him was in this courtroom. Their witness says it could have been an extortion. Catherine McVanival. Now, we've talked a lot about her already, and I don't want to talk about her much more. But ask yourself about all her lies. This Halloween nonsense. Go take a look at Defense Exhibit 34. Charlie Adelson knew nothing about Sigfredo Garcia on Halloween. You see it in text message on November 27th. Don't try to spin the text message. Read it for yourselves. Defense Exhibit 34. Her testimony alone should give you a mountain of reasonable doubt. Clarissa Libiedo and Erica Johnson. The state called them to prove something we already admitted in opening. Katie didn't work at the Adelson Institute. Mary Hall, truthful witness. She confirmed that Katie got paid overtime. She couldn't give you exact numbers, but when you look at the numbers, you see it corresponds to around $3,000 a month. She confirmed that the Adelson checks created a paper trail, something that Charlie had no issue with because he was not part of the murder. She confirmed the gifts, the payments for the car repairs. By the way, she confirmed that he put many of those on his credit card, creating a paper trail as well. Now let's talk about those gifts, because I want to make sure everyone understands it. Over time, Charlie became more and more convinced that Katie was not part of the extortion, but he needed her help. See, because as long as she was helping him, he knew he wasn't going to be paid a visit. As long as she was helping him, he knew the money wouldn't go up. And so he tried to keep her happy. Now, they want me to believe he tried to keep her happy because he was worried that she would go to the police and report a murder that they both did together.
God, he's getting...
Does that make any sense?
Getting animated again.
No, he tried to keep her happy because he wanted her to know he was appreciative that she was helping him. Investigator Corbett, a thorough witness, straightforward guy, honest. This is the phone analyst investigator. He looks at patterns. He doesn't know what's said on the phone. It's guesswork. He sees the frequency in the amount of calls. And he looks for patterns. Now, when asked, could these calls be because it's a boyfriend and a girlfriend, a mother and a son, husband and a wife? He says, of course. He also confirmed that there's an absence in records. That by the time they arrest Charlie Adelson in 2022, we can no longer get phone records before when they got him originally. We can no longer get SunPass records. SunPass records would show that Donna Adelson and Charlie Adelson, Donna Adelson and Harvey Adelson never were at Charlie Adelson's house that night. He confirms that. And he also confirmed that there were a lot of calls that are consistent between Charlie is driving to work and coming home from work. Now, I want to talk about this landline issue because it is crazy. It may be the craziest thing in this case. And it's done to incite you. And when you think about it, you're going to see it means absolutely nothing. So they have a chart. She showed it in closing.
Rachel C., welcome in. And you are correct.
Frequency in using the landline, calling the landline. And you see that Charlie hardly ever calls his parents' landline. Okay? And they want to show you that on a particular day or days, he calls the landline. So that must mean something. What does it mean? He's using his cell phone. He's calling his parents' number that has been the same number since the year he was born. Grasping at straws. That's what that is. Then they confuse a wired call with those calls. What they're confusing is there's a call after Charlie, you'll see it, go look at it. There's a call after Charlie learns about the text message that they sent to his mom at like 2 a.m. You'll recall that he and his parents meet at the pool at their apartment, and you'll recall that Charlie then goes and he goes to a friend's office and he gets a call or calls Katie, and then he says, I'll call you from a landline. And that's because he doesn't get good service in that office. It has nothing to do with his parents' apartment. This landline, it doesn't mean anything. It's like magic. It's like they're putting on a magic show. Use your common sense.
Oh, it's magic, you know.
Corbett also confirmed that Charlie's house was a stone's throw away from the turnpike, and that the most direct route to Tallahassee for Donna and Harvey is to take the turnpike, which passes right outside his house. And he
it's
confirmed that Charlie didn't
Charlie
leave his house for more than 24 hours
in
after the night of the story.
prison.
They show you that gym text. Corbett, their own witness,
He's a
confirms he didn't leave the house.
murderer, yeah.
We're almost there. Special Agent Jimenez.
He sees the jury. They're like, ah.
No real substance. He pretends to be a Latin King gang member
Yes.
when he does the bump of Donna Adelson. It's going to be critical that you hear that and understand that. He pretends to be a brother of Tato. And he testified up here that the reason why he did that is because he wanted the Adelsons to know that it was gang related. Up until this point in time, we're now in 2016, April 19th, there's nothing about Latin Kings. No matter how many times Ms. Kappelman wants to ask Charlie about Latin Kings in 2014, or talk to you about Latin Kings in 2014, they're nowhere near this case in Charlie's mind until 2016. And more precisely, until April 20th of 2016. And we'll get there in a moment. But Jimenez testifies that he inserts this into the bump. Then we heard from Agent Bronstein and Keith McElvey. And we learned from them that only part of Dolce Vita is recorded. You saw it's difficult to hear. You can't hear almost anything Catherine McDaniel was saying. And we learned that there's numerous recordings. By the way, you have 2 of the recordings. I submit to you that the recordings are the exact same. You can listen to it for yourself. But it's interesting where they started the recording that they played for you. And we know what he meant when he said that, because he never fled. You heard from Special Agent Sanford. He went to places far away. Extradition's tough. And he always came back. Investigator Kendall, Matsuri.
How's it?
Probably my favorite question in the case that he didn't understand until later when I asked him whether he didn't like sushi. That's how they knew he was police.
Had sushi yesterday. It was amazing.
But he testified that when he arrested Charlie in 2022, there was barbed wire and cameras all over his house. Ask yourself why. He confirmed that arrest was 6 years after the arrest of Sigfredo and Cat Kate. Ask yourself why. Now they put on evidence through Special Agent Sanford a second time, and they called him to put in all the wires. But he couldn't really talk about what the wires meant, because he was a part of those conversations. Only 2 people could really talk about what they were meant. And frankly, I thought maybe we'd have a he said, she said case in this case. They didn't call Catherine McDaniel. You only have one version, the truth of what was said on those wires. We'll get to that. Sanford the second time confirmed that Katie was hiding when the police came knocking on her door. She lied to you about that. He confirmed that Katie lied during her proffers, that he had to walk out. She lied to you about that. He confirmed that there was no evidence of any calls between Katie and Charlie after Sigfredo's arrest in the spring of 2016. He testified to the numerous lies that Katie told on the wires to Charlie, and how she didn't lie to her co-conspirator, Sigfredo. That was their case in chief. We had no obligation to put on a case. When you're evaluating the presumption of innocence and whether they met their burden beyond a reasonable doubt, stop right there.
Stop.
They didn't come close.
In the name of love.
But we put on a case. We talked a little bit about Lawyer
I wish Charlie would just break out in the song. Not
We can
Charlie,
move on.
but
You
Rash
get the
would
point
just
of what
break
her
out in the
purpose was.
song.
But Charlie
Rash
Adelson
bomb.
testified.
Rash bomb.
And when he testified, you saw him explain on direct what happened on the 18th. How he was extorted. How he was fearful for himself and his family. You heard why he didn't go to the police. Now, listen, some of us might go to the police, some of us might not. You heard why he didn't go to the police. Reasonable. He had just seen what had happened to Professor Markel. He knew the danger of these people. And she wants you to think that he would negotiate with Katie that night. He was stunned. What was there to negotiate? And again, there's no counter narrative because they didn't call Katie Magbanua and ask her about it. You heard why he thought Katie wasn't part of it and was protecting him. And you may remember Miss Kappelman trying to trick him. And he was clear. In 2014, he had no idea she was behind it. No matter how many ways she tried to ask the question. You saw him explain all the liars. I'm not going to do it here. I won't do that to you all. You saw him explain every word on Dolce Vita. You saw him explain what Dolce Vita was about. See, what you learn is that he met with his mom. And at first he thought this might be the same original extorter because he knew that Catherine and Sigfredo were having issues. And that made him nervous. But he also saw how different this was. And I apologize. I went over so many wires where it's the same thing over and over and over as to him trying to compare the two events. I did it for a reason. It wasn't to bore you. It was to show you in real time what was on his mind. When he met with his mom, because of the differences, he was pretty certain it was the police. And he had no clue who Tato was. But then he meets with Catherine Magbanua in that car, and he freaked out. And you know why he freaked out? Because he learns that there is a Tato. He learns that he is not only in the Latin Kings, but is the head of the Latin Kings. He learns that he has brothers. Remember the bump? My brother is incarcerated, and he learns that Tato is incarcerated. And he thinks to himself, oh my God. And by the way, he also learns, which we now know is a lie, because again, Katie was trying to protect Sigfredo. He learns that Tato was the killer. He wasn't the killer. Sigfredo was the killer, Tuta. But in the car, he learns about the Latin Kings, he learns about Tato, and he learns that that is the guy that she told him killed Professor Markel. And you wonder why he's talking the way he's talking at Dolce Vita. He is freaking out. He thinks his mom, if they don't pay, is going to get killed. And if she doesn't get killed, someone else is. And so when they walk into Dolce Vita, that's what the debate is about. So you have to understand the context of the conversation. When they're talking about rental cars, it's because he's just learned about the rental car. When they're talking about dead gang members, it's because he's just learned about a gang member, Tato. And the debate is, he wants her to pay. And she's telling them, it's not them. It's not him. And the reason why she's telling him it's not him is because she knows who Tato is. You saw Tato. He'd be a little bit more threatening than the guy you saw in the video. And his associates would be a little bit more threatening than Mr. Jimenez. And through Dolce Vita, what you see is a couple things. And you can listen to it, don't take my word for it. You see him trying to act tough. But then you see him quickly say, but I don't know anything. I'll keep my mouth shut. So he's acting tough. I'm carrying a gun. I'll shoot the gang member in my driveway, but I don't know anything. I'm keeping my end of the bargain from July 18th. I'm not going to say a word. This discussion about information and details, it's clear on Dolce Vita and on the liars what they're talking about. The details aren't details about a murder. The details are details about the payments. By the way, that's what they talked about when Jimenez came and did the book. We know you've been helping. The payments. They leave out the fact that repeatedly he says, I don't care if it's the police because I got nothing to hide. It's said in Dolce Vita. Discussions about the importance of the characteristics of the guy who approached them. He's using a real phone number. He's not wearing a disguise. He's not giving 48 hours. He's not being threatening. Again, we talked about it. They only know part of the story. Discussions about who he hopes it is. Hopes it's the police. And you see that contrary to what Ms. Kappelman said in closing, his absolute first instinct is to pay. He wants her to pay. She doesn't want to pay. See, she knows it's not out there. She knows it's not secret. And she's trying to convince him it's the police. And you'll see in the video, she goes to the bathroom. By the way, he's been talking like this. He doesn't stop. She goes to the bathroom, and he finally listens. And when she comes back, you see his conversation changes again. Just look at it. I see what you say. Here's the number. Call the number. And he starts talking about how it's different. And then he calls his mom, and he talks to his mom about how it's the police. And Matsuri is the same thing. Now, why they're talking in code, listen, I think this is semantics. There is no code, but we can agree on this. They are talking carefully. And the reason he is talking carefully depends on who he is speaking to. When he's speaking to Catherine Magdanua, he is speaking carefully because he needs her help, and he does not want to spook her. When his mom and him are speaking carefully, it's because he does not want anyone to know, including the police, about the first extortion. Because if they know about the first extortion, they're going to come talk to him, and he believes that he and his family will be in danger. And by the way, he doesn't go to the police because it's clear the police wouldn't believe him. Just like they don't believe him right now. Now, during Miss Kappelman's cross of Charlie Adelson, you saw it. I'm not going to go into it in detail. But one thing is clear, is that he knew the wires cold. He knew dates. He knew what he said on particular wires. And you might ask yourself, why? His life is dependent on those wires. For the last year and a half, he's been in prison, jail. He's reviewed those wires because he knows they show what really happened. The wires show his innocence.
Do they,
and
though?
They certainly don't show proof beyond a reasonable doubt of his guilt. You know, like the landline, I want you to think about the bullet bourbon. Agent Maltese was told to take a picture of that bullet bourbon, done to incite. Thank God Andy Adelson took the invitation to the party. Not the simplest explanation, but the truth. The state's case is like that. The case against Charlie Adelson is a case of guesses and of assumptions. It was not brought until just weeks before Catherine McManuel's second trial. 8 years after the murder, 6 years after the arrest of Sigfredo, and later Catherine McManus. The evidence wasn't there then, and it isn't there today to meet their high burden. The puzzle pieces do not fit. He did not participate in the murder of Professor Markell. He didn't do it. He didn't conspire to do it. He didn't solicit it. By the way, speculation can be reasonable doubt. You can go back there and speculate. You can use your common sense and figure out.
Your Honor, to stand for the law.
French. Regarding the last comment concerning speculation, you may continue with your argument.
You're allowed to use your common sense. That's what you're allowed to do. That's what you're told to do. You don't have to check that in the door out there. The presumption of innocence means that we presume the best about people. We presume them to be blameless. That means when you're listening to these wires, if there are two possible explanations, you go with the one that is favorable to Charlie Adelson. That's what is consistent with the presumption of innocence. The state wants you to assume guilt. They want you to listen to these wires, and they want you to hear them in a certain way, through dirty lenses. They want you to look at them through the lens of everything being wrong and sinister. That is not what the law says you should do. If you presume this man innocent, which the law says you must do, which is what each and every one of you gave your word you would do during jury selection, then you look at these wires and you listen to them, assuming the best about Charlie Adelson. And when you have two explanations, both of them reasonable, you go with the one that presumes his innocence. That's how our system works. Reasonable doubt, the judge has instructed you on. And he's told you that reasonable doubt is...
Ooh, actually, coming out of this coming out of this live right here today, I will be sending you guys to my live tonight for my second channel, Wrestle Plunge, at 6 Eastern tonight. We're currently watching an old promotion in 1990 from Charlotte, North Carolina. Having a lot of fun watching that one, and yeah, we don't take it too serious. So if you do come over, be prepared for some fun. Just like you'd have your own publicly post. But hell yeah,
vacillate,
rocking
you go back and forth.
Tonight.
Either explanation could be right. If you waver at all, that is living, breathing proof of reasonable doubt. And when you find yourself doing that, you must find Charlie Adelson not guilty, because that is reasonable doubt and shows that the state did not meet its burden. Each and every one of you promised us during jury selection that you have the courage, the fortitude, that the prosecution didn't meet its burden, something they have not come close to doing in this case, that you would have the courage to say the words not guilty. And that's what we're asking you to do, because simply put, the evidence isn't there. The evidence is actually consistent with innocence. Now, because of the state's high burden of proof, they get another closing. And I don't get to speak again. So I need each and every one of you, when they're speaking, to think in your minds, what would Bashcom say? What would the evidence say? Remember, in our system, they don't get the last word. You do. I know you will take your jobs as jurors seriously. I know you will follow the law, the presumption of innocence, and the high burden of proof. If you do that, there is only one just verdict in this case. Count 1, not guilty. Count 2, not guilty. Count 3, not guilty. End this nightmare. Send him home. Thank you, Your Honor.
State prepared to give its rebuttal closing.
Yes, Your Honor.
You may proceed.
Send him home.
The defense has encouraged you to speculate in this case. The law does not allow that. I want to draw your attention to page 4 of your jury instructions. Let's pick them up. Page 4, middle of the page. Whenever the words reasonable doubt are used, you must consider the following. A reasonable doubt is not a mere possible doubt. Could it be? Not good enough. A speculative doubt. Speculation. Don't have that in the courtroom. Don't have that in the jury deliberation room. Imaginary or forced doubt. Not reasonable. Such a doubt must not influence you to return a verdict of not guilty if you have an abiding conviction of guilt. When you're back there and you're thinking about what Mr. Rashbaum would have said, he would have said, puzzle pieces. First puzzle piece.
He would have said puzzle pieces.
He had a great life and he wouldn't have wanted
She's
to
coming for him.
The problem with that argument is arrogance. This was not an issue for him because he wasn't going to get caught, because he was untouchable. He said relocation had no impact on Charlie Adelson, and that they proved Wendy's innocence in their questioning of her. Why are they working so hard to convince you Wendy is innocent? Does it matter? Y'all aren't being asked to decide anything about Wendy Adelson. There's nothing on that verdict form about Wendy Adelson. Did she corroborate the defense theory in this case? Wendy Adelson testified she didn't know anything about the supposed extortion of her brother, even though she moved there the day this happened. She didn't know in 14, she didn't know in 15, and she didn't know until it was announced in opening statements in this courtroom.
Oh, Jersey Jan getting on there today for herself. That's what I'm talking about. Adala Hala. Thank you, Jersey Jan. I appreciate that. Boom.
I asked her about it, and she said, quote, well, I learned that someone made that argument. I don't know whether it's true or not. I don't know whether it's true or not. Even his own sister doesn't believe this load he's trying to set up. Garcia wanted to kill the defendant, so he wouldn't have done a hit on his behalf. And for that, they referred to the jet ski incident. They couldn't be in a conspiracy together because they hated each other. Well, that was part of the purpose of the blowing off. The whole theory of this defense is that this defendant was so fearful of Sigfredo Garcia that he couldn't do the normal thing. He couldn't report this. But he continued to date Catherine Magdala, Garcia's baby mama, after all this. After July 1, when they had this incident in the roadway. After the extortion. And even after that, he continues to send love notes to Sigfredo Garcia's woman. Even after the two of them get back together, he's still sending those notes because he's so arrogant. has told you that the defendant made the joke about the TV being cheaper than hit them to people he hardly knew. Who are those people? The only person that testified in this courtroom that they had heard that joke was Wendy Adelson. Lacoste was asked. The lawyer said they said it, but you guys have to refer to your notes and your own memories about what evidence showed. But Lacoste was asked, did he say the joke at the dinner that y'all went to with Wendy and Garcia and Catherine McDaniel? I'm sorry, Wendy and Charlie and Catherine McDaniel. And he says, no. He does not recall that joke being made, and he thinks he would have recalled it had it been made. So there is no evidence in this trial that the defendant told that joke to people he hardly knew. If this was a murder for hire, it should have been paid in advance. Murder for hires always get paid in advance. That's what Pat Sanford said. That's not what he said. What Pat Sanford said is the arrests have been made close in time after the other murder for hire cases have worked, so there's no payment over time, gifts and stuff like that. Here, the investigation took years for the defendant to have the opportunity to try to keep her happy, to try to provide these gifts. Not only to her, but to Secretary Garcia. A gift card for a vacation on your extortion victim. Offered, not asked for, not demanded, offered. Offered to the extortionist. The defense talked about Catherine McDaniel. He hates when people lie, and she's a liar, and she lied to you. Well, Mr. Rashmon's opinion about the witnesses, he told you which ones were good, which ones were lying, which ones were truthful, which ones were the best ones, which ones meant nothing. You guys decide that stuff. Okay? What we say is not evidence. Catherine McDaniel is a liar, though. I mean, she said other stuff, and now she's saying this.
Picked a different fucking lawyer.
She has played every card. She has. This is the last stop for her. I agree with that. You guys agree to jury selection, that you would keep an open mind to that type of evidence, and that's all I ask you to do. Does it fit with the other evidence in the case? Because her last testimony sure didn't. Nobody has stronger feelings about Catherine McDaniel than the one sitting on this side. Would I ask you to base this defendant's freedom on the word of Catherine McDaniel? That's what they said I'm doing. I would never do that. Never. Does it fit with the other evidence in the case? That's what I'm asking you to consider. I didn't ask her about Dolce Vita. She verified the transcript. She said the words that scrolled when y'all watch it were the words that were said. The state has a doubt. What if we do? It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter what the lawyers think. Doesn't matter. Do you have a doubt? Doesn't matter what I think. Doesn't matter what Mr. Rochbaum thinks. Regarding the defendant's demeanor in 2014, the defense said there was nobody that said anything about his demeanor. We only asked about, was he going crazy after the vote? And the answer was yes. That's not true. Ryan Fitzpatrick, who was his best friend in 2014, they didn't follow until 2015, reported no change in his behavior. I said, was his behavior weird like that before the bump? No, not weird. That was his quote. He was normal until the bump, and then he was agitated, angry, freaked out, tense, stressed, whatever. Why didn't I play all of the calls? Did y'all get enough of the calls? Starting to pick the parts that I think are important. They're in evidence. Feel free to listen to them. I do not want you to think I was trying to hide anything from you. Those are in evidence. And you will have an opportunity to review anything you want when you're back there with the recording equipment, headphones, and all that will be provided to you. The defense says, in calls A, B, and C, if you did a murder with someone, wouldn't it be the first thing on your mind to report? Well, maybe, but you're probably not like Charlie Adelson. You're probably not untouchable. Charlie Adelson asks the description on the wire, tell me about this guy, what's the timing, was he wearing a disguise? How do those questions, the defense is offering that as evidence that he was trying to deduce whether this blackmailer is the same as the prior blackmailer, but he never saw the prior blackmailer. He only saw Catherine McDaniel.
I fixed it, but I think that might be in the audio.
The guy that approached his mother was wearing a disguise.
I hear it too, and I usually don't hear it.
His innocence, or tend to prove
but I did fix it.
Theory.
I saw that. Thank you, Pete.
The guy that extorted him was wearing a floppy hat and a Lincoln beard. Who's Secretary Garcia? It was Catherine McDaniel.
Jared is hilarious.
Secretary Garcia, the first extortionist, didn't give him 48 hours to pay. He put him on a payment plan. He paid over years.
Put him on a payment plan.
The defendant proving it's the police. And saying, quote, these people only know part of the story, or they think they are part of the story. The defense picks that out and says, oh, there he is talking about the first extortion. Or is he saying, why did they go to my mom instead of me? I'm the one that has a connection to you. I'm the one that, I think what he says is, I'm the one that has a relationship to you. Why didn't they come to the one that's involved? I mean, I'm not involved. That's what he says. Why didn't they come to the one that was involved in this? That's what he's trying to figure out about why they went to his mom and not him. Can't even remember right in here. Oh, the PowerPoint with Wendy. Okay. The dots on the cell phone PowerPoints do not indicate where the person was. They indicate the cell tower that was servicing the person's phone at that time. So they're going to be somewhere around there. And the testimony was that Wendy's dot at 12:30 could be consistent. He can't say where she was. could be consistent with her being at Trescott. And we know she went to Trescott because Officer Green observed her there. So I'm not desperately trying to pound a puzzle piece into y'all that Wendy made the call to say it's done. I don't know that. I can't prove that. If that information was conveyed, I don't know how it got conveyed. All right, Lacoste. They really need y'all to discount the testimony of Jeffrey Lacoste, right? Because of that statement that Wendy made to him just before the murder, that all kidding aside, her brother really had looked into hiring hitmen to kill Dan Markel. And the defense says, you can't believe him, he's a jilted lover. And the evidence definitely showed that he was heartbroken over Wendy Adelson. But unfortunately for the defense, his brain was working just fine. And he testified about Charlie Adelson bragging in the hot tub about connections to a Cuban criminal element. The defense says, oh, they're not Cuban, that's not in evidence. They're of Hispanic descent, and he reported that to law enforcement, but that's what Charlie said. Lacoste doesn't know if they're Cuban or something else. Lacoste said he bragged in the hot tub about having connections to a Cuban criminal element, and when Lacoste reported that information, the killers had not been identified, so he had no way of knowing if they were Cuban or Hispanic descent. That's the importance of that. Lacoste says Wendy reported a celebration dinner, same thing. He comes in and tells the cops, look, she reported a celebration dinner to me where she vomited on the table. An inspection of the records proves there was a dinner, and she did vomit. But they want you to believe that Lacoste is just lying about the celebration part? The Halloween text. They've asked you to look at their piece of evidence that talks about when Garcia learned about the existence of Charlie. That doesn't shed any light on what we were saying occurred on Halloween. On Halloween, Charlie, this defendant, approached Catherine Magdalena about, do you know anyone that can wrap him up? Okay, we're not alleging that she called Garcia that day and said, hey, can you come kill somebody? That was just the first inquiry into a plan that developed over time between Charles Adelson and Catherine Magdalena. All right, the defense mentioned Erica. I'm almost done. Erica Johnson and her testimony, that didn't mean anything. Why did they call them? What about that recorded call between the defendant and Erica? Why does he tell her not to talk to the police? What about Jen and Matinda? Why does he tell her not to talk to the police? They don't know about the first layer of extortion. They can't reveal the first layer of extortion that will reveal the second layer of extortion that will expose him to the Latin Kings. Why is he telling them not to talk to the cops? Defendant's testimony. They say it's reasonable that he didn't go to the police with the truth because he had just seen what these people were capable of. They killed Dan Markel. He was in fear. Okay. Is that consistent with what you know about him? I refer you back to the wires and everything you know about him. But also, why then not come forward with this story when the bad guys were arrested and the danger was eliminated? Why not come forward when Catherine McDaniel was arrested and he believed her to be innocent? For 3 years she awaited trial while this man thought she had nothing to do with it. What do you mean? Yet he did not come forward with this story. Why not come forward after her conviction? All of the bad guys have been arrested and convicted. Danger eliminated. Come tell the truth. He doesn't do it. What about after his own arrest? He doesn't come forward then. We learn it in this courtroom in opening statement. Defense says the defendant freaked out in the car before Dolce Vita. You have to watch Dolce again and see if you think he was freaking out or if he was in control of that situation. He was the one giving orders in that situation. I'll go back to the players in this case being smart. I mean, the defendant is smart. And they had over a year to carefully plan this murder with the goal of not getting caught. And he's had 7 years to think about his defense in this case since the case first broke. And he does think he's untouchable. Don't guess. Don't assume. Look at the evidence. It will tell you everything you need to know. But don't let the way the defendant thought he would get away with this be the reason he gets away with it. As long as you keep your mouth shut, you can get away with murder. Well, fortunately for us, the defendant didn't take his own place. He did take the witness stand. He did all those things, and you are able to assess his credibility as part of the determination of this case. Only one of us is putting on a magic show. It's up to you all to figure out which one it is.
Hey,
right?
morning, Brooklyn.
We just hope and trust that you all have the common sense and the courage to see this case for what it is, to cut through all the stuff that the lawyers say, and to
Jim,
render a
throw us
verdict
another
that does
dollar.
justice for Dan
Thank you,
Markel.
Jim. I appreciate
And that
it.
is a verdict of guilty as charged. Thank you.
Okay, we are going into... Here we go. The verdict and sentencing. We're at the end of this son of a bitch.
Jury comes in.
here.
Remain seated. Everyone else, please rise.
This has been an interesting trial. It feels weird to get through a trial so quickly after going through Spectre, but here we are. Ending in trial.
Everyone but the foreperson can be seated. Has the jury
Thanks
reached a
everyone that's
unanimous
hung out for the
verdict?
entire
If you
thing.
please could hand the verdict form to the bailiff.
We're about to do it right now. This is it.
The verdict form is in its proper order. Madam Clerk, please publish the verdict.
In the Circuit Court of the Second Judicial Circuit in and for Leon County, Florida, the State of Florida versus Charles Adelson, case number 2016 CF 3036B, verdict. Count 1. We, the jury, find as follows as to count 1 of the indictment, first-degree murder. The defendant is guilty of first-degree murder. Count 2.
No.
We, the jury, find as follows as to count 2
I'll never forget
of the
him saying
indictment,
that when it happens. He goes,
conspiracy to
no.
commit first-degree murder. The defendant is guilty of conspiracy to commit first-degree murder. Count 3. We, the jury, find as follows as to count 3 of the indictment, solicitation to commit first-degree murder. The defendant is guilty of solicitation to commit first-degree murder. So say we all this 6th day of November, 2023.
I'm not sure. Does anybody know right off?
Does
I
the
think it was
defense
just a
wish-
few hours, if I remember correctly. I remember watching this with Jay in real time. And I think it was like the same day when they went back to deliberate.
For the court to poll the jurors.
Yes, Your Honor.
Juror Moore, was your verdict and the verdict of the jury as a whole just announced?
Yes.
Juror Brazos, was your verdict and the verdict of the jury as a whole just announced?
It was.
Juror Gardner, was your verdict and the verdict of the jury as a whole just announced?
Yes.
Juror Strong,
Ooh,
was
that's
your
another
verdict
will,
and the verdict
Jim.
of the jury as a whole just announced?
Yes, sir.
Juror Kraft, was your verdict and the verdict of the jury as a whole just announced?
Yes, Your Honor.
Juror Milne, was your verdict
Thank
and
you
the
so much,
verdict
Jim.
of the jury as a whole just announced?
Yes, sir.
Juror Hawley, was your verdict and the verdict of the jury as a whole just announced?
Yes, sir.
Juror Thorne,
Judge Everett, could I please say, fuck yes, it was.
was your verdict and the verdict
Hell
of the jury
yes.
as a whole just announced?
Yes, sir.
Hell yeah.
Juror Brim, was your verdict and the verdict of the jury as a whole just
Look out,
announced?
dude.
Yes, sir.
Juror Williams, was
This
your
guy.
verdict and the verdict of the jury as a whole just announced?
Yes, sir.
Juror Douglas, was your verdict and the verdict of the jury as a whole just announced?
Yes, Your Honor.
Juror Platt, was your verdict and the verdict of the jury as a whole just announced?
Yes, Your Honor.
Members of the jury, I'm going to give you one last brief instruction, and from here you will be discharged from your service. On behalf of the parties, the lawyers, and the people of the state of Florida, I want to thank you for your time and consideration of this case. I'm also going to advise you of some special privileges that are enjoyed by jurors. No juror can be required to talk about the discussions that occurred in the jury room, except by court order. For many centuries, our society has relied upon juries for consideration of difficult cases. We have recognized for hundreds of years that a jury's deliberations, discussions, and votes should remain a private affair for as long as they wish it. Therefore, the law gives you a unique privilege not to speak about the jury's work. The lawyers and their representatives are not permitted to initiate any communication with you concerning the trial. However, you may speak to the lawyers or anyone else about the trial if you desire. You also have the right to refuse to speak with anyone. A request may come from those who are simply curious or from those who might seek to find fault with this decision. It will be up to you to decide whether to preserve your privacy as a juror. We give you our sincere thanks for the work that you have performed over this 2-week trial. You are discharged. Have a wonderful evening.
Boom.
Everyone may be seated. Mr. Adelson, you are going to be remanded pending sentencing at this time. Does the defense wish to have a pre-sentence investigation report prepared as to counts 2 and 3?
Yes, Your Honor.
Very well. The court will order that the pre-sentence investigation be prepared by the Department of Corrections. I believe it will take possibly a month.
Oh,
I'm not sure if it
Charlie.
will take longer than that. From there, will the parties be prepared to move into sentencing?
Yes, Your Honor. May I have a moment to confer with the family?
If they wish to make any impact statements tonight,
Yes, sir.
go ahead.
Here to present victim impact tonight, but as you know, family members have traveled a great distance, so we're hoping Your Honor will permit them to appear and make their statements by Zoom whenever we're reconvening for sentencing.
That will be permitted. Anyone who wishes to provide testimony for the sentencing portion may do so over Zoom. I believe this does not implicate any right of confrontation unless the defense has something to raise concerning that matter.
No, Your Honor.
Very well. We are in recess at this point. Oh, yes. We are going to wait until the jurors have vacated the courthouse, and from there, everyone will be dismissed. Let's go ahead and set a case management date as a status. This will ensure that we have the PSI in place. That will be on December 12th at 2:30 in the afternoon. If everything is prepared, we can go ahead and have the final disposition on that day as well.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, we're now in session. Honorable Judge Steve.
Now we get sentencing.
Good morning, everyone can be seated. I'm going to turn on the Zoom, and once I'm logged in, at that point, we will move forward. As with all things computers, it needs an update. Let's go ahead and make the appearance.
He's looking rough too, man. Look at him.
This is while the computer is performing its function.
Georgia Kappelman and Sarah Dugan for the state, Your Honor.
Good morning, Your Honor. Dan Rashbaum on behalf of Mr. Adelson, who is present.
And we're here this morning for final disposition after jury trial in Mr. Adelson's case. Did either the state or the defense have anything they needed to raise concerning the pre-sentence investigation report?
Nothing from the state, Your Honor.
No, Your Honor.
Very well. The pre-sentence investigation report will be filed as a part of the court record. Once the Zoom has finished updating, from there I will open up the Zoom room, and I believe the victims' families were intending to either be present or make additional victim impact statements. Mr.
Yes,
Kappelman?
sir. We have several members of the family that will be present and one that will be speaking on behalf of the family.
Very well.
Who's going to be talking?
Mr.
I've never seen
Rashbaum, does
this.
your client wish to make a statement, or will you be making any argument on behalf of counts 2 and 3?
Both of us will be making a very quick statement.
Charlie's going to
I'll
talk.
make a quick argument, and Mr. Adelson would like to make a very quick statement.
This big cop behind
He'll
him.
be given the
Ready to
opportunity
go.
to do so. First, we will take the victim impact statements. If the parties are intending to sign into the Zoom, you may do so. Just make sure your devices are on mute so it does not create any feedback or problems. Good morning, Mr. Markell.
Good morning, sir.
I believe Mr. Markell and Shelley Markell have now joined. Ms. Kappelman, how many additional members of the family were you expecting?
Oh, let me check on that. Judge. One more.
I don't have everything. Where's my compliment?
I was about to ask that question.
All right, Judge, I think we're ready.
All right. Good morning. At this time, we are going to start with the victim impact statements. Mr. Markell, I understand you are going to provide it today on behalf of the family.
Yes, thank you.
You may speak when you're ready. Take all the time you need.
Good morning, Your Honor. My name is Phil Markell. I am Dan Markell's father. Dan, my only son, was born October 9, 1972 in Montreal, Quebec. During that time in Quebec, husbands were not allowed to actually be in the delivery room during a child's birth. However, since the obstetrician was a very close friend of ours, I was allowed to experience the most amazing of moments, the birth of my son. I will never forget the emergence of his head, and then those shoulders of an NFL football fullback, a boy of 10 pounds. There I was, holding in my arms this gift of life, my bundle of absolute sheer joy. From the time he was a child, my son had tremendous energy, intelligence, and great warmth. Dan had a vibrant, fun-loving personality and lived life to its fullest. Danny loved to socialize, dance, cook, entertain, and play sports, and dedicated himself wholeheartedly to everything that he did. He always looked to do his utmost to improve and achieve better results in every activity that he did. This desire of improvement and commitment to excellence was a defining characteristic of his short life. I fondly remember taking Danny skiing up the hills in the Laurentian Mountains in Quebec when he was just 2 years old. He rode up the mountain between my legs, holding on to the T-bar, and then coming down the ski hill yelling with great joy, "Faster, Dad, faster!" Then, as he grew a little older, he played hockey at the local park. To improve his skating skills, he requested to take a speed skating lesson with a local coach who was from Russia, and he had a reputation of being a very tough coach. Dan persevered, and after every hockey lesson, he came off the ice with a red face, totally out of breath, because he always gave it his all. At about the age of 13, Danny developed the idea that he was going to Harvard University for his college education. He discovered that the acceptance requirements for Harvard were not only good grades, but also work for the community and charitable work. To achieve these goals, he revived his high school newspaper. He became the newspaper's editor, the business manager, and performed charitable deeds and volunteered in the community. After years of hard work and determination, Dan was accepted to Harvard. He graduated from Harvard magna cum laude, went on to study at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem for 1 year, and then earned a Master in Philosophy and Political Theory from Emmanuel College at the University of Cambridge in England. He returned thereafter to Harvard Law School to earn his law degree, and went on to become an extremely successful lawyer, influential legal scholar. Dan served as a law clerk for a federal judge, worked as an associate at a prestigious law firm in Washington, D.C., and then secured a prestigious teaching position at FSU College of Law. In a few short years, Dan became a full tenured law professor before the tender age of 41, quite unusual. Dan co-authored a book and published many articles in highly regarded law journals and newspapers like the New York Times. Dan's work was influential, and he gave lectures and presented at universities around the world. Although Dan was fond of his Canadian roots, he was very dedicated to the FSU Law School and the Tallahassee community. He was recognized as a scholar who contributed and made a difference in the world. While Dan's career was important to him, family meant everything to Dan. Danny's marriage produced 2 boys, Benjamin and Christian, who were his absolute world and a love thing to him. Dan made sure that he and the boys came to Montreal. Dan made sure that he and the boys came to Montreal and Toronto to attend every family affair and visit with all the extended Markel family, including grandparents, uncles, aunts, and many numerous cousins. Despite the distance, Dan felt that the boys had to know and be a part of family. Dan also made sure that he and the boys participated in the Tallahassee community and they were involved in the local synagogue and neighborhood. Dan left home at the young age of 17 to go to Harvard, but he always came home for summer vacations, holidays, and all family functions. Danny and I, despite the fact that we lived quite far apart, regularly communicated by text, email, and phone calls. Despite the physical distance, as time moved on, we grew ever so share our meals, set our tables with a tablet in the middle, and over Skype, we would sit together and enjoy each other's company for a couple of hours despite the actual distance. Dan's life was abruptly cut short, and he was forever taken from me, his boys, and the rest of our family, and all his many friends and colleagues. My life has been in total disarray since Dan's murder. Many nights I wake up in the middle of the night in a terrible sweat with thoughts of Dan's murder and all that has happened. There is not a single day in my life since Danny's death that in one way or another he does not enter into my thoughts. And I miss him with all my heart. I'm constantly reminded of Dan's murder and his absence. When I meet new people, the topic of discussion always comes up when they ask whether I have children. How do I respond? It is difficult to put into words the heinous acts that took Danny away from us, the unthinkable pains that I must live with every single day. Losing a son or a daughter is something I wish nobody should have to experience. It's not in the order of nature. Danny is never coming back. We continue to hope and pray for justice and the return to normalcy of seeing and playing a vital role in the lives of our two grandsons, Ben and Lincoln. It has been a number of years since I last wrote a impact statement, sharing how Danny's death has affected me. Despite our persistent efforts, we still do not have a real relationship with Danny's sons, Ben and Lincoln. Visits are limited and very controlled. For 6 years, we were denied any and all visits with the boys. In the last 2 years, I've been permitted 2 60 to 90-minute visits, supervised visits. This limited contact is incredibly painful, and I feel like we have cut out of our life. Not only have I lost my son, but I have effectively lost 2 of my grandkids as well. Even their family names have been changed from Markel to Adelson. While we work hard to help introduce a new bill in the state of Florida known as the Markel Act, which gives grandparents important rights, unfortunately, our relationship with Ben and Lincoln has not been materially improved. As this bill was coming to fruition, there was a lot of negative publicity in the press and media about Danny's ex-wife, Wendy. In my opinion, Wendy was focused on improving her public image, and as a result, extended an invitation to us to Ben's bar mitzvah. Ruth and I were invited to attend only the ceremonial part of this important stage in the Jewish boy's life. And we were not invited to participate in any reception typical of this celebration. But this invitation opened the door to one of the limited visits described above. In order to not overwhelm Ben and Lincoln on this important day, we asked to arrange a meeting before the bar mitzvah in order to make things easier on the boys, who we hadn't been allowed to visit in years. We were able to arrange a brief 90-minute supervised visit with Ben and Lincoln, and a few weeks before the bar mitzvah. However, immediately after our brief visit, Charlie was arrested, and Wendy rescinded our invitation to the bar mitzvah. At the time, she said that they were going to either postpone or completely cancel this bar mitzvah ceremony. Neither of those happened. Excuse me.
Take your time, sir.
Instead, my understanding is that the Adelsons went on to have the bar mitzvah ceremony and party, all without the Markel family's presence or participation. himself on this important moment in Ben's life was incredibly thankful. After so many years without Danny, we had hoped to make progress in forging a consistent relationship with his sons in this important life cycle event. Dan's murder brought his life abruptly to an end for no sensible reason and has affected a countless number of people. The legal community is deprived of Dan's wisdom and ideas, which made the world a better place. Dan's students are deprived of the experience of having Dan as a brilliant professor and caring mentor, showing them a path. Dan's colleagues can no longer benefit from Dan's friendship, insights, and scholarly discussions and debates. Ruth and I have been deprived of our son, who has been taken away from us so suddenly and totally against life's schedule. Ben and Lincoln must go through life without their father, who loved them with all his being. The boys have been deprived of their father's entire family after Dan's murder. We have no idea of what these two boys know or have been told about Danny's death. I truly believe that they have been brainwashed in all these years, from the ages of 3 and 4 years of age to the present day. I also have no idea what the boys know of us, the entire Markel family, our history, etc., and especially how much we all love them and how we wish they were active part of our family. Both Ruth and I are approaching 80 years of age. At this moment we are healthy, but one does not know what tomorrow brings. The wheels of justice turn very, very slowly, but so far we're very grateful that they're still turning. We're very grateful to Tallahassee law enforcement, to the state attorney and all their staff, to all our relatives and friends, including the hundreds of Danny's friends and colleagues around the world, for their constant support over these long 10 years. To all the podcasters who work hard to keep alive this unbelievable story. We are still waiting for Benjamin Lincoln to have a more normal relationship with the Markel family as we wait in pain and anguish. The Adelson family, in particular Charlie Adelson, has been a major cause of our heartbreak and the murder of our son Danny and the loss of our 2 grandsons. I have suffered tremendously, and we as a family continue to suffer. It is satisfying to see justice being done, and it would be appropriate to ask for the maximum sentence for the perpetrators of Danny's murder. Thank you. Today is a good day.
Thank you, Mr. Markel.
Wow. Good ending.
Was there anything else that you wish to say as a part of your victim impact?
No, sir.
Ms. Koppelman?
You're asking me. We do have some letters which we submitted to the court, as Your Honor received those and had an opportunity to review them.
I did. I was able to review the letters. They were also a part of the pre-sentence investigation packet, which will be filed in the court file as well.
Yes, sir. Nothing further regarding victim impact.
What is the state's argument with regard to sentence, at least as it concerns counts 2 and 3?
In regards to counts 2 and 3, Your Honor, we are seeking the maximum sentence. We're asking for consecutive 30-year sentences on both of those. I have prepared a score sheet in reference to those. May I approach?
You may. Have you already showed the score sheet to Mr. Rushbaugh?
I think so, but I'll...
Does the state have any further presentation to make?
The only other matter...
Earling's going to give a brief statement that is interesting.
Go ahead.
The only other matter, Your Honor, is that in reference to costs of prosecution, we've been attempting to gather up some of the necessary financial paperwork from the FBI and TPD and my office as well to see if we can come to an agreement with the defense on what costs of prosecution should be ordered in this case. We have not been able to do that yet, so I would ask for Your Honor to reserve that issue for 90 days It's possible, as I said, we can reach an agreement on it, but if not, I would ask for a hearing sometime around 90 days to make a determination about costs of prosecution.
Mr. Rauschbaum, do you have any argument to make on your client as to counts 2 or 3?
Judge, we understand the situation. We just ask that those counts be run concurrently.
Very well. Mr. Adelson, I'm going to give you the opportunity to make a statement if you wish. You do not have to speak. However, this is your opportunity if you choose to do so.
I do.
You may stand.
Same.
Here we go.
I would just like to say that I maintain my innocence.
Noted.
Well, please rise. I'm now going to pronounce the sentence.
Fajitas?
With the jury having found you guilty of all 3 counts that you were charged with in your indictment of first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit first-degree murder, and solicitation to commit first-degree murder, I am going to adjudicate you guilty of all 3 at this time, and you are going to be sentenced as follows. As to count 1, the first-degree murder count pursuant to section 782.04 and 775.082 Florida statutes, you are sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of release or parole. As to count 2, you are going to be sentenced consecutively to 30 years in the Department of Corrections for conspiracy to commit first-degree murder.
So that's forever, your entire life, plus your corpse, 30 more years.
As to count 3, you are going to be sentenced to 30 years in the Department of Corrections consecutively for solicitation to commit first-degree murder. The credit for time served that applies in this matter is how much?
597.
597 days will be applied as credit for time served in this case. If the clerk could please read all fees and costs that would apply as well.
$2,100 as a fine pursuant to Florida Statute 775.083, $105 as a 5% surcharge required by Florida Statute 938.04, $20 as a court cost pursuant to Florida Statute 938.06, Crime Stopper Trust Fund, $3 as a court cost pursuant to Florida Statute 938.01, subsection 1, Criminal Justice Trust Fund, $50 pursuant to Florida Statute 938.03, Crimes Compensation Trust Fund, $225 pursuant to Florida Statute 938.05, Local Government Criminal Justice Trust Fund, $2 as a court cost pursuant to Florida Statute 938.15, County Criminal Justice Education, County Code 7-26, $50 as a court cost pursuant to Florida Statute 775.083, subsection 2, County Crime Prevention, $3 as a court cost pursuant to Florida Statute 938.19, Teen Court Assessment, Mayor County Florida Code 7-28, $65 as a court cost pursuant to Florida Statute 939.185, County Additional Court Cost, County Code 7-24, with a total of $2,600.
Mr. Rauschbaum, is there any lawful objection for you to raise to the assessment as announced by the clerk?
No, Your Honor.
Those amounts will be assessed at this time. Ms. Kappelman, I will reserve 90 days of jurisdiction to address the cost of prosecution in this case. By statute, the state is entitled to the 100, but this is in excess of the 100 is what you're referring to.
Yes, Your Honor.
Very well. 30 days to appeal both your conviction and now your sentence. Mr. Adelson, you are going to be fingerprinted today, and from here you are going to be sent to the Department of Corrections to begin serving your sentence. Mr. Rauschbaum, if you please can timely file the notice of appeal so that way there is no issues regarding any review of the conviction itself. Does either party have anything further to raise to the court before we finish for today?
Nothing from the state.
Season
No, Your
6.
We are in
In
recess.
the books.
Mr. and Mrs. Markell,
Murder Church.
have a good day. Thank you for being available so you can provide your victim impact statements. Have a good day.
Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you.
in the books. If you made it through season 6, another one. If you've only just started, we have tons of seasons. I mean, the first season 1 was Jeffrey Dahmer.
Pre-sentence investigation.
We've got a lot that we've done. We're going into season 7 starting next Saturday with a female murderer. That is the only hint that I'm giving right now. Keep an eye on all socials. I may drop a video, probably will on X, about what's coming next before next Sunday, to entice you to come in Tuesday. We got a wheel for Tuesday night. We're doing reaction videos to body cams Tuesday night and on Thursday night this week. And Feral Friday is going to be a doozy with tons of awesome guests. We got Chris Stewart coming in. We got Dandy coming back. Holly Berry going to be coming on to watch a movie I've never watched called The Wood. It's going to be a good week. But tonight on Wrestle Plunge, live, 6 Eastern, I'm going to be hanging out for 2 hours with all of my friends that come through. And we have a good time on there. And this stream is going to take you directly into that stream. So please, when you get there, show it some love. Give it a like-ski. That'd really help me out. Even if you don't come back for it tonight, you could help me out by doing that. Also, a video just dropped on, or is about to drop, excuse me. I think it drops in about an hour right here on this channel. And it's really just a clip from one of the reaction videos. But those videos have been fun as hell, and we have officially done it, ladies and gentlemen. Season 6 in the books. Feels weird to say that so quickly after season 5 took us literally a year and a half. Just teasing everybody just a little bit. Female killer, female murderer. And book club Tuesday night, we finish The Stranger Beside You Tuesday, and we will discuss what's coming next. Tuesday night will be a little bit longer of a show, actually. I'm going to do an hour of body cams, and then it'll probably be about an hour of book club. And again, if you're not in the book club, the only way to get in there is to become a member here at Publicly Buzzed and to member up. And I do have a link right there in the chat that you can click on to do such a thing. There it is. You click on that, and you get membered up. And you'll be ready to rock and roll with us Tuesday nights. And again, brand new book moving forward. I know Simi's excited about Wrestle Plunge. She comes in every Sunday night, hangs out with us. It's a fun time. Again, it's different. I get it. You know, if you're only here for the crime, if you're only here for the true crime, if you're only here for the trials, I understand. But you know, we also have a good time over on Wrestle Plunge. But if you could come through tonight, or even right now when I send you over there, hit a like. I'd appreciate it. But everybody, thank you so much, and I will see you when I see you. Let's go. Love you guys. Have a great Sunday.
Nothing to see here, please.